A plane drifted across the radiant sky, as if marking the beginning of a journey none of them were yet ready to understand. Below it, machines hurried the luggage along, echoing the restless motion of lives being carried from one place to another. The lobby swelled with travelers, each wandering in their own orbit, unaware of how many stories brushed past them. Among the movements, a man in an overly cheerful Hawaiian shirt pushed toward the exit, carrying a confidence he didn't quite feel. Beside him walked a woman with soft curls, moving with the practiced patience of someone holding a family together. Between them trudged a young man burdened by an oversized suitcase and an even heavier reluctance. Together they emerged as a single household, father, mother, and son, bound more by circumstance than ease. The father marveled at the unfamiliar air, as though the world here carried a weight he had long forgotten. The mother reacted with quiet caution, sensing how easily unfamiliar places could misunderstand careless enthusiasm. The son, wrapped in embarrassment, questioned their choice of clothes, as if the fabric alone could expose them. The woman rested a hand on his head, steadying him with the affection only a mother could wield. She drew him close, gently reminding him through presence more than words that reckless honesty could be dangerous in a world that wasn't theirs. Soon they slipped into a taxi, letting the city swallow them whole. The skyline revealed the Seoul Tower, rising like a monument to the future they were stepping into. The spiral tower followed, twisting upward in a bold defiance of gravity. Countless impossible structures blurred past, each one fueling the father's awe as though he had discovered a new universe. His excitement rippled through the taxi, amusing the mother, irritating the son, and softening the driver into a warm, tolerant smile. The father removed his shades, laughing with a joy that asked whether everything here reached for the heavens. The mother's calm held steady, absorbing his wonder without judgment. The son sank deeper into irritation, wishing the world would stop drawing attention to them. The driver, overtaken by amusement, asked if the father had been away from Seoul for decades. The father revealed almost proudly that this was their very first visit, leaving the driver stunned by the purity of his awe. Before confusion could shape into words, a sudden movement shifted the moment. The mother's hand pulled the father back by his seatbelt, disguising the gesture behind forced admiration for the passing scenery. The driver, lost between politeness and bewilderment, could only wonder what unseen story unfolded in the back seat. A sidelong glance revealed the father settling into uncharacteristic stillness, staring out the window as though the world had suddenly grown too large to process. The mother tried to lighten the silence with a soft laugh, yet the son's expression stayed fixed in quiet frustration as he turned his attention to the passing city. Their journey ended before a towering twin-spired residence, a place that seemed to test the limits of human ambition. The mother admired its grandeur, while the father noted its staggering cost, an amount that felt more like a myth than a price. The son could only marvel at the sheer scale of such wealth, as if reality itself had shifted beneath him. As they approached the entrance, a uniformed officer intercepted them, embodying the unyielding structure of the world they were stepping into. The guard requested their purpose, explaining that no one entered such a fortress without proof of belonging. The family paused to study him, and the mother offered a polite bow in an attempt to soften the rigid air between them. The father responded with a confident smile, gesturing toward the highest point of the building, the home they claimed as their own. The guard froze, startled by the idea that these unfamiliar faces belonged to the building's summit. The mother explained their recent move, as if trying to bridge the gap between disbelief and truth. Yet the guard remained drenched in nerves, overwhelmed by the implications of their status. The scene then shifted to the sprawling campus of Seoul's International High School, a world governed by expectations and quiet competitions. In a sunlit classroom, a teacher introduced the new arrival, announcing the young man's transfer as though unveiling a turning point. The students reacted with curiosity, surprised that he was not part of the usual exchange programs that cycled through their halls. Even the students who typically drifted through the day awakened at the rare break in routine. The teacher noted that his acceptance into their advanced class spoke for his abilities, urging them to welcome him without preconceptions. Turning toward the newcomer, the teacher subtly pressed him to step forward and share who he was. The young man allowed a quiet moment to settle before preparing to speak. Then, with measured calm, he introduced himself as Kang Geon and asked for their understanding as he found his place among them. A girl at the back whispered in admiration, struck by something compelling in him. Her friends teased her openly, noting that Liara had already found someone who matched her tastes. The teacher quickly refocused the room, reminding them that time was limited and lessons awaited. Kang Geon moved to an empty seat, pulling the chair back with the quiet resolve of someone stepping into an unfamiliar life. He sat beside a brown-haired boy, easing into the subtle hum of a world that was already beginning to reshape him. The brown-haired student and his friend studied the newcomer with a wary intensity, as if sensing an unspoken disturbance in their familiar world. The teacher questioned whether Kang Geon could keep pace with the advanced coursework, reminding the room of the academic height he was stepping into. He offered no reply, letting silence shield the uncertainty or confidence beneath his calm exterior. The teacher, unsettled by the lack of response, presented a complex problem and invited him to demonstrate his skill before the class. Kang Geon simply glanced at the equation from his seat, barely acknowledging the weight of the challenge. Moments later, still unmoved, he stated the solution 224 as though it were an obvious truth. The teacher froze, unable to reconcile his ease with the difficulty of the calculation. The class scrambled to verify the answer, their pencils racing to catch up to his mind. The first student to finish lifted a hand, unable to mask his disbelief. His confirmation only deepened the teacher's astonishment, proving that Kang Geon's answer had been flawless. The teacher struggled to accept that he had solved such an advanced problem mentally and with such startling speed. The brown-haired boy stared at him, shaken by the gap between expectation and reality. Even the usually composed front-row students failed to contain their shock. Liara's grin widened, convinced now more than ever that he matched her ideal in ways she hadn't expected. Unaware of the admiration and unease swirling around him, Kang Geon remained motionless, retreating into quiet thought. One resolve threaded through his mind with unshakable clarity. He intended to complete his mission no matter the cost. A flashback opened onto a younger, frailer Kang Geon, gasping for breath as he ran under an unyielding sky. He kept sprinting, watched closely by a nearby police officer who measured his endurance with cold precision. He then appeared buried in advanced books, forcing knowledge into his mind as though survival depended on it. Again, armed officers stood guard, supervising his efforts with silent authority. Even weapons training became part of his routine. Knives were as familiar to him as pens. Kang Geon struck a tree repeatedly, carving disciplined patterns while an officer monitored his form. Soon after, 3 distant targets were pierced with impeccable accuracy, each shot landing exactly where intended. By then, Kang Geon had transformed into a young man shaped by relentless precision and hardened purpose. He no longer resembled the breathless boy he once was. Now he moved with a stamina forged through relentless discipline. The scar-faced officer watched him quietly, lowering his gaze as if acknowledging the transformation with a mixture of pride and regret. Yet Kang Geon remained still for a moment, breath uneven but controlled, hovering between exhaustion and determination. A brief silence settled between them before he suddenly surged forward, knife in hand, closing the distance with lethal intent. The officer deflected the strike effortlessly and retaliated with a swift kick, forcing Kang Geon to guard his face with his arm. As he staggered, the officer redirected the blade toward his temple, turning training into a razor-thin test of survival. The edge hovered dangerously close, threatening to plunge into his eye. Relying on instinct alone, Kang Geon dropped low, avoiding the fatal strike at the last possible second. The blade still grazed him, carving a sharp line across his forehead. Both combatants rebounded, exchanging slashes with mechanical precision, their movements reflecting years of hardened repetition. Their clash halted only when the commanding officer announced that Agent 7 had been assigned a new mission. The operation would take place in South Korea, a name spoken with the weight of inevitability. The officer warned that the mission could stretch across a decade or even longer, testing loyalty beyond ordinary limits. His task was to infiltrate the upper tiers of South Korean society, becoming indistinguishable within its elite circles. Shock rippled through Kang Geon as he learned he would need to establish powerful ties in politics and economics, weaving himself into their highest networks. And once those ties were secured, he would wait patiently, indefinitely for the party's final directive. A bead of sweat traced down his temple, revealing the weight he carried beneath his composed exterior. When the officer demanded acknowledgement, Kang Geon straightened into a salute, affirming his understanding with unwavering resolve. As his hand remained raised, he noticed two additional officers approaching him with measured steps. One was a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, the other, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 20s. They were introduced as his future comrades. Kang Geon turned to study them, assessing their presence with silent scrutiny. Both officers bowed in unified respect, signaling their readiness to align with him. The commanding officer returned the gesture, lowering his cap in acknowledgement. But Kang Geon refused to bow, standing firm and expressionless, letting his gaze communicate a warning sharper than words. His new comrades read his refusal instantly, their faces tightening as the male officer dipped his cap to obscure his reaction. Returning to the present, the father stood at the window, letting the city's skyline wash over him while the mother quietly approached. She wondered aloud whether Kang Geon could truly be deceived, prompting the father to turn and acknowledge her presence. Her expression carried a fragile sorrow, the kind that suggested tears held back by sheer will. He took her hand gently, urging patience, reminding her that haste would only endanger what little they had gained. For now, saving Kang Geon from the place that shaped him was victory enough. Back at school, students crowded around Kang Geon, one girl loudly insisting that Lee Ara had already set her sights on him. He looked around in confusion, attempting to identify the person everyone seemed to be talking about. But the trio of girls only closed in further, their curiosity sharpening as they demanded to know why he transferred so late, how he managed it, and where he had come from. Their assumptions drifted into speculation. Some imagined he'd returned from abroad, tying his origins to powerful ministries and distant nations. Overwhelmed, he could not answer any of them, pressed into silence by the sheer weight of their intrusion. Suddenly, the cluster of girls parted reverently as someone else approached, their posture shifting into respectful bows. Lee Ara stepped forward with unshakable confidence, hands resting on her hips as she closed the distance. She offered him a warm, assured smile while introducing herself with deliberate clarity, Lee Ara. Before he could respond, she asserted control of the moment, confirming his name as Kang Geon as if declaring an undeniable fact. He met her gaze with silent defiance, refusing to offer validation or explanation. His mind drifted inward, plunging into a sudden flashback. In the memory, he sat before a table covered with documents detailing Lee Ara, her history, affiliations, and vulnerabilities laid out with clinical precision. He continued scanning the files, absorbing each detail with methodical focus. His older male comrade entered carrying another stack of documents, thick with additional targets. The comrade explained that these were new profiles requiring study, far more than originally planned, and urged caution. With a heavy thud, the stack fell to the floor, signaling the magnitude of the work ahead. Kang Geon expressed gratitude, but the comrade immediately pointed out that his tone needed correction. Kang Geon faltered, unsure of what he meant. The comrade clarified that his manner of speaking must match that of a native, reminding him that even small slips could expose him. Seeking confirmation, the comrade asked whether Kang Geon understood the gravity of these adjustments. He held his gaze steady, agreeing with a resolve that seemed carved from the remnants of his past. The flashback dissolved, pulling everything back into the present where the weight of his mission lingered like a shadow he could never escape. He recognized Lee Ara instantly, knowing she stood at the top of his priority list, more significant than she could ever realize. She belonged to the rarest tier of society, the elite of the elite born to the empire of Samjong Group, a corporation whose influence towered over the nation. His objective was simple yet suffocating. Remain close to her, close enough to someday extract the secrets buried deep within Samjang Group's walls. When the silence around him stretched on, Lee Ara observed him with curiosity, wondering if his quietness was simply how he lived his life. He reminded himself why he was here, forcing his mind back into the constraints of the mission he could not afford to fail. With that reminder grounding him, he responded in a tone that carried more calculation than emotion. She lifted her phone toward him, a gesture that felt casual to her but catastrophic to him. She simply wanted his Instagram, a harmless request by normal standards, yet for him, it landed like an impossible test. He froze, unable to hide the shock that rippled through him, as if that single question had exposed a fatal flaw in his disguise. His reaction sparked curiosity among the girls, some even wondering if his silence and confusion hinted at a life across the northern border. With a sigh filled with mild frustration, Lee Ara reached out her hand, offering to at least exchange numbers. Yet she had no way of knowing the truth. That he had arrived for this mission with almost nothing prepared, not even a phone to anchor him to this world. Their concern deepened. Though their assumptions darkened, they could only conclude he truly had no phone at all. Sweat gathered and fell from his face as dread sank into him, the fear of failing before even beginning tightening around his chest. Lee Ara, unable to make sense of any of it, asked if he was living like some relic from a forgotten age. Disappointment softened her expression as she chose to say nothing more, the silence heavier than any insult. After a moment that felt longer than it was, she turned and walked away, leaving him in the hollow aftermath. He stood petrified, watching the fragile architecture of his mission collapse before his eyes. The two boys in the corner mocked his misstep without mercy, their laughter echoing his downfall. The rest of the class whispered their own theories, assuming strict parents or an unusual life, none of them imagining the truth. And then, as suddenly as they had gathered, they dispersed, leaving him alone without anyone needing to push them away. He clenched his hands tightly, adrift in uncertainty, unsure how to salvage the mission slipping through his fingers. The moment he grasped how fragile his disguise appeared, missing Instagram, missing identity, even mistaken for a northerner, he understood the first essential tool he lacked, a phone. When school ended, he began the quiet journey back to his high-rise apartment, carrying the weight of the day like an invisible burden. His mind spiraled in a closed-loop: Instagram, phone, North Korea, each thought chasing the next with relentless urgency. He drifted through the streets like a hollow shell, barely aware of people or movement, lost inside a maze of his own anxieties. Then sharp noises tore through his trance, snapping his attention back into the present. He turned, instinctively alert, seeking the source of the disturbance. A cluster of bodyguards stood rigid beside an array of ultra-luxury cars, their presence signaling someone of immense power. As he observed, a familiar classmate walked past him, unnoticed by his spiraling mind. A young woman with long black hair moved toward one of the cars, her steps quiet, her aura distant. She toyed with her hair absent-mindedly, eyes fixed downward, carrying herself with an elegance she didn't seem aware of. He recognized her instantly, priority 0 ranked even above Lee Ara in the hierarchy etched into his mission. But before action could take form, a towering bodyguard shifted into place, blocking his view with a wall of impenetrable muscle. The man's size felt almost unreal, like something engineered rather than born. The guard glanced down at him, amusement flickering as though challenging his insignificance. Yet Kang Geon refused to yield. He met that stare with the same quiet ferocity that had shaped his entire upbringing. Around them, more guards closed in while another opened a Lexus door, ushering the young woman inside with disciplined formality. One after another, the guards entered their vehicles, the convoy gathering itself like a synchronized machine. Nearby, Lee Ara approached her own luxury car, surrounded by her equally formidable protectors. The bodyguards exchanged courteous bows, acknowledging each other's vigilance and shared duty. Soon the girls settled into their respective cars, followed by the guards, forming a procession of wealth and security. The convoy pulled away while he remained motionless, watching it disappear like a reminder of a world far above his own. The sheer gulf between their lives and his left him unsettled, staring after them with a mix of confusion and awe. As he finally stepped forward, a hand sliced through the air toward his face with clear, hostile intent. It was the brown-haired boy, swiping aggressively to shove him aside, but Kang Geon's reflexes saved him, his head snapping away just in time. The boy recoiled in disbelief, stunned by the speed that seemed completely out of place in an ordinary student. Kang Geon remained silent, his gaze unwavering, absorbing the tension without a word. He gritted his teeth as the other voiced his irritation, a small, sharp intrusion in the quiet. It soon became clear that this boy, too, was born into wealth. Even the bodyguard bowed in respect, thanking him for his efforts at school that day. Kang Geon observed the brown-haired bodyguard approach, an expensive Mercedes G-Wagon, a testament to status unspoken. As the affluent students departed, the remaining students slowly began crossing the street, returning to their ordinary homes. Kang Geon lingered, silently processing the currents of privilege and power that had just passed before him. Suddenly, a figure emerged, a boy with a bowl cut shadowing his eyes, calling out with an unexpected offer. From prior notes, Kang Geon recalled him, Jang Dong-woo, grandson of the Minister of Justice, scion of a dominant legal dynasty, his family holding positions that shaped the very system around them. Jang Dong-woo explained how the road always became chaotic with wealthy students departing, and Kang Geon listened quietly, absorbing the unusual concern. Noticing that Kang Geon lacked transportation, he generously offered a ride home, bridging social gaps with an unspoken gesture. Kang Geon hesitated, weighing the propriety and practicality of the offer, the silence thick with contemplation. Sensing the pause, Jang Dong-woo wondered if he had overstepped, fidgeting with the uncertainty of social nuance. Eventually, Kang Geon accepted, expressing gratitude in a quiet acknowledgement, and Jang Dong-woo's relief and joy were immediate. While preparing to depart, Jang Dong-woo asked where Kang Geon wished to be dropped off, his curiosity blending with courtesy. Without overthinking, Kang Geon requested Bampo Blue Tower, an uncomplicated answer to the unfolding social exchange. Smiling broadly, Jang Dong-woo remarked on the grandeur of the residence, and the two exchanged names formally, establishing a tentative connection. Instructions were given to the driver to drop Kang Geon at his tower and then return to the academy, the rhythm of hierarchy quietly enforced. The driver acknowledged the order with a slight nod, respect manifesting in small gestures. Inside the car, quiet settled among them, though Jang Dong-woo fidgeted incessantly, the nervous energy palpable as he turned toward Kang Geon. He asked about the math problem from earlier, voice tinged with both awe and anxiety, marveling at Kang Geon's rapid mental solution. Kang Geon paused, briefly unsure how to respond to the sudden fascination, processing the unusual request. Quickly recovering, Jang Dong-woo apologized, explaining his amazement at the speed and precision of Kang Geon's mental calculation. Confessing his struggles with math, he admitted his excitement, which prompted Kang Geon to offer direct tutoring, a proposal that stunned him. Clarifying his willingness to teach, Kang Geon extended not just instruction but a method for mental mastery, bridging the gap between talent and mentorship. Overwhelmed with anticipation, Jang Dong-woo's face lit up, his earlier tension dissolving into eager expectation. The boy kept giggling to himself, delighted by the idea that Kang Geon would be tutoring him, unaware of the tension simmering beneath the surface. Outwardly cheerful, he reassured himself that everything might unfold smoothly, even if his confidence felt hollow inside. Yet, recklessly, he blurted out the question gnawing at him why Kang Geon didn't have a phone or Instagram, leaving Kang Geon momentarily frozen in disbelief. Meanwhile, across the road inside the blue Rolls-Royce, Liara traveled quietly with her bodyguard driver, the world moving around her in polished silence. The driver responded attentively when she called for him, waiting for her next question. She explained that a new transfer student had appeared that day, and she wanted to know what kind of person he truly was. The bodyguard, sensing potential risk, asked whether she wanted a full, formal investigation through their internal department. She declined the deeper probe, insisting she only needed to know if the newcomer was someone safe to be around. Without hesitation, he promised to have a simple, clear report prepared for her by nightfall. The thought of uncovering this mystery seemed to amuse her quietly as she let a small smile settle in her mind. Back at Kang Geon's apartment, the atmosphere shifted into a staged warmth. The Asima the Ray operative greeted him with a glowing enthusiasm, calling him her son, leaving him stunned by the unfamiliar affection. He stood confused, unable to grasp why the situation felt so strangely intimate. Remaining in character, she gently reminded him that he should respond naturally, like a real son returning from school. His adbrotherate stayed silent, his attention fixed on the newspaper, letting the scene unfold without interference. Kang Geon struggled to react, caught between training and this bizarre imitation of family life. Eventually, with embarrassment tinting his face, he managed to echo the expected greeting. The mother teased him playfully, amplifying his awkwardness with exaggerated enthusiasm. But soon, she shifted the topic, nudging him toward his room with excited insistence. Though confused, he followed her encouragement, her expression promising clarity once he saw it himself. The moment he stepped inside, shock rooted him in place. Before him was a beautifully arranged study room, neat desk, stacked boxes, bursts of color carefully placed. On the desk rested a laptop, a tablet, and a smartphone, all tools crafted to build the modern identity he lacked. The bed was a charming bunk frame with a ladder, the kind children often dreamed of. Posters lined the walls, and a musical keyboard waited nearby, as if someone had tried to craft not just a room, but the illusion of a childhood he never had. As he absorbed the sight of the extravagant room, Kang Geon questioned whether such spending was even permissible, though the Akuma the Rakwaji operative only laughed brightly in response. She insisted the lavishness served the mission, a necessary illusion to project the image of a wealthy family. Still uncertain, Kang Geon approached the desk, examining the new devices arranged with calculated care. The smartphone was the first thing he lifted, feeling its unfamiliar weight in his hand. He stared at the device intently, while the mother continued giggling, unsure why he lingered over something so simple. Turning to her, he asked if she understood what Instagram was, addressing her with rigid formality out of habit. She responded with the same confusion he felt, clearly unfamiliar with the subject. Then the Adafather operative appeared with a smug grin, stepping in as though he had been waiting for this moment. Proudly pointing at himself, he claimed the role of instructor, eager to teach Kang Geon about Instagram. The mother laughed at his sudden enthusiasm, while Kang Geon remained puzzled by the theatrics. Elsewhere in the city, a girl pushed herself through an intense late-night workout, sweat marking her discipline. It was Lee Ara, running under the dim lights, forcing her exhaustion into motion. Eventually, she sensed someone nearby and slowed, noticing a presence at her side. Her personal butler secretary bodyguard bowed respectfully, waiting for her acknowledgement. He handed her a document, an investigative profile detailing the background of Kang Geon's supposed father. The report listed his name, Steve King. It identified him as a second-generation Korean-American and CEO of 11coin, one of the world's top 5 cryptocurrencies. His assets were estimated in the high billions of won, possibly far more, painting a picture of immense wealth. The secretary added further context, explaining that beyond cryptocurrency, the company had rapidly expanded into security and networking across the US and Japan, with growing interest from China. Lee Ara simply murmured in acknowledgement and closed the report, her expression unreadable. The secretary offered once more to conduct a deeper investigation. But she dismissed the idea, placing the file aside as though the matter no longer needed scrutiny. To her, the boy seemed respectable enough, and that alone was sufficient. A new morning dawned at Seoul International High School, carrying the quiet tension of beginnings. Kang Geon set his new smartphone on his desk with deliberate pride, hoping it would anchor him to this world he was struggling to blend into. Kang Geon let out small chuckles intermittently, attempting to draw attention without seeming overt. His subtle amusement worked. Lee Ara glanced back, curious about the source of the laughter. But when she turned fully, she saw him seated quietly, composed as if nothing had occurred. His eyes darted subtly across the room, gauging who might notice the novelty of his new phone. Liara perceived his intent immediately, the corners of her lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. Kang Geon caught her gaze and sensed her awareness of his quiet display. Pride swelled within him as he lifted the phone deliberately, a silent declaration of presence. Liara's expression was layered amusement, approval, and curiosity mingled in her gaze. Jang Dongwoo approached with warmth, congratulating Kang Geon on acquiring the phone. But the two side students leaned on Jang Dongwoo, an unspoken assertion of dominance in the space. The brown-haired boy mocked him lightly for his sudden closeness to Kang Geon, testing boundaries. Jang Dongwoo felt surprised at how quickly camaraderie had formed on only the second day. Nervous but compliant, Jang Dongwoo admitted their friendship was born of practical need Kang Geon's aid in mathematics. Meanwhile, the long-haired student watched silently, his gaze a quiet warning. Kang Geon mirrored the silence, a deliberate calm that spoke volumes without a word. The long-haired student tapped his head, acknowledging responsibilities but signaling a temporary claim over the newcomer. Jang Dongwoo did not respond, head bowed, internalizing the unspoken hierarchy. He rose quietly and departed, leaving the space tense but undisturbed. Left alone with Kang Geon, the long-haired student's smile turned unsettling, a silent challenge. Kang Geon's expression remained unreadable, a mask honed by countless observations and careful training. Drawing on the intel provided, he identified the student as Go Jin Seo, scion of the Go Young clan, political heavyweights with deep influence and connections. Standing alongside him was Hwang Woo-young, eldest son of Dijon Group, a global sports conglomerate ranked 13th in business influence. A quiet thrill ran through Kang Geon. Proximity to such power was a rare opportunity. Seizing the moment, he offered to teach mathematics to both, a strategic gesture to cultivate closeness. The offer was met with scowls, the two boys clearly unimpressed and wary of his approach. Hwang Woo-young stepped back, muttering to himself about how to temper Kang Geon's presence, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. Resting a hand on Kang Geon's shoulder, he leaned close, as though to impart a harsh lesson on hierarchy. His whispered warning stressed the importance of understanding one's place, urging silence and invisibility. Kang Geon remained impassive, absorbing the intensity of the lesson without outward response. Hwang Woo-young pressed harder, fingers digging into Kang Geon's shoulder, demanding acknowledgement. The weight of the moment sank in. Tension coiled in Kang Geon's body as he realized the gravity of the encounter. Internally, his restrained fury began to surge, a controlled storm preparing to manifest. Every muscle tensed, his mind sharpening as if readying for an attack he would never release. In his imagination, his palm struck like a blade, slicing through the air toward Hwang Woo-young's neck. The vision was vivid. The imagined strike left Hwang Woo-young coughing, stunned, and unbalanced. Yet reality was silent. Kang Geon's fury remained controlled, confined to his thoughts, his body still. Instead of violence, he confronted Hwang Woo-young's notion of invisibility, questioning its meaning in his own steady gaze. Hwang Woo-young, confused, could only demand clarification, unprepared for Kang Geon's composure. Without a word, Kang Geon grasped Hwang Woo-young's wrist firmly, asserting control without striking. His grip tightened, a quiet display of strength that carried an unspoken warning. Pain radiated through Hwang Woo-young instantly, his balance faltering under the pressure. Within moments, he sank to his knees, caught off guard by Kang Geon's unyielding force. Bewilderment clouded Hwang Woo-young's expression as he struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. Kang Geon's calm smile framed a subtle question, challenging the dynamics of friendship in this world. From the corner, Go Jin Seok observed quietly, displeasure flickering across his features at the unfolding confrontation. His patience thinned, tension rising, as he registered Kang Geon's silent dominance. Hwang Woo-young yanked his arm free, breaking the grip, driven by a mix of pain and frustration. In retaliation, he swung at Kang Geon, rage in his motion, shouting challenges that hung in the charged air. Kang Geon remained unmoved, eyes fixed on the corner, the incoming punch irrelevant to his focus. His gaze caught the camera mounted on the wall, triggering memories of his father's warning. In South Korea, surveillance was everywhere. Father Comrade revealed a control room, its screens alive with feeds from every alley, street, and mall, an omnipresent eye tracing the city's heartbeat. He guided Kang Geon through the console, selecting specific streams to illustrate the breadth of surveillance. One feed focused on Kang Geon's own classroom, the familiar surroundings now framed as both a stage and a lens of observation. Shock flickered across Kang Geon's face, disbelief at the reach of the camera, but Father Comrade's calm assurance grounded him. The console scrolled seamlessly, revealing new angles and hidden corners, a digital map of potential opportunity and vulnerability. The basketball courtyard, empty yet alive with echoes of past games, flickered on screen. The teacher's common room, a place of whispered conversations, now laid bare in crisp detail. The auditorium, expansive and silent, framed as a theater of both learning and oversight. The library, its aisles of books captured in stark clarity, a repository of knowledge exposed. Laughter bubbled from Father Comrade, amused at the ease with which boundaries could be crossed, yet tinged with the gravity of potential missteps. Excitement surged in Kang Geon, a desire to express gratitude almost slipping into familiarity. But Father Comrade halted him, a stern reminder of the discipline and decorum expected in their interactions. Kang Geon straightened instinctively, tension coiling as he corrected his posture and tone. The warning was clear, restraint was paramount, and every action was recorded, a reminder that impulsive violence could undo even the best laid plans. Returning to reality, Kang Geon evaded the punch by shifting his head to the side, a precise dodge honed by countless drills. He countered by gripping the table edge, anchoring himself and preparing to respond with controlled force. With a measured push, he pressed against Hwang Woo-young's midsection, asserting subtle dominance without overstepping bounds. Hwang Woo-young steadied himself by seizing another table, their balance a fragile stalemate. Both stood locked in tension, neither yielding. The classroom transformed into a silent battlefield of wills. Veins throbbed on Hwang Woo-young's forehead, anger and humiliation radiating from every line of his face. Before escalation could continue, Lee Era's voice pierced the charged air, halting the conflict with authority. Her presence demanded civility, reminding them that barbarity served no one, no matter the provocation. Go Jin Seok interjected, framing the altercation as a lesson for the new transfer student, a justification for their impatience. Their intent, though rough, was an attempt to educate him on unspoken rules, a misguided exercise in enforcement. Lee Era's intervention underscored the futility of their aggression, leaving even Hwang Woo-young exposed to the shame of his behavior. Teeth clenched, Hwang Woo-young vowed internally to settle the score later, tension coiling in his chest like a spring. Yet Kang Geon, with a sly, controlled smile, let the provocation hang in the air, questioning when that reckoning might come. Hwang Woo-young retreated silently, leaving the classroom simmering back to a fragile equilibrium. The room slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the undercurrent of rivalry remained palpable. Observing the strained dynamic with the 4-star recruit, Kang Geon measured his next steps, calculating each subtle move. His mind churned with strategies, weighing how to navigate alliances and mend tensions. The next class commenced, a foreign teacher stepping in to guide English, unfamiliar presence slicing through the lingering unease. Despite the new lesson, Kang Geon's thoughts lingered on Go Jin Seok, worried that inattention might irreparably fracture their budding rapport. The teacher inquired gently about his comfort with English, offering support if needed, unaware of the strategic calculations beneath his calm exterior. With effortless fluency, Kang Geon assured mastery, his articulation precise, controlled, and smooth as butter. Surprise flickered across the teacher's face, astonishment at the perfect pronunciation, prompting her to probe the source of his skill. He revealed an education in New York's international schools, a past shaped by opportunity and rigorous discipline, now redirected to serve his father's enterprise. Awe rippled through the classroom, admiration drawn not just to his skill, but to the quiet confidence underlying it. Zhang Dongwu in particular felt captivated. The teacher urged classmates to engage with him, framing him as a benchmark for linguistic excellence, a living example of polished American English. Pride and subtle triumph warmed Kang Geon, a quiet gloat at this incremental mastery of societal perception. Lee Ara observed the scene with amusement, noting the delicate orchestration of attention and influence unfolding before her eyes. Yet not all shared this admiration. Some in the classroom felt the sting of displacement and rivalry. Go Jin-seok and Hwang Woo-young writhed internally, their composure threatened by the ease with which Kang Geon commanded approval. The three girls who had previously surrounded him returned, their curiosity renewed, marveling at his accent and speculating about his origins. They pressed him with personal questions, a barrage of intrigue and expectation that left him momentarily locked in silent calculation. To redirect the tide, Kang Geon offered his phone to the central girl, a tactical gesture in social navigation. Confusion met the offering, yet she accepted it, a temporary bridge in the unfolding social negotiation. Lee Ara eventually took the device, scrutinizing it with measured curiosity, evaluating both its form and owner. Upon realizing the phone's origin aligned with her company, approval lit her expression, a silent acknowledgement of strategic alignment. Kang Geon's sense of accomplishment swelled, a quiet gloat at the subtle mastery of social perception and incremental societal integration. Kang Geon's pride swelled so much he almost crowned himself a star. Yet Lee Ara's response tempered his arrogance, reminding him of the subtlety required in observation. She began scrolling through his Instagram posts, tracing images that marked a life of curated travels and staged moments. One post stood in front of a grand gate, each pose meticulous, each frame deliberate. Another captured the Eiffel Tower, its backdrop as much a statement of worldliness as of precision. Others traced oceans and quiet promenades, yet all bore the same exact positioning, a hint of artifice hidden beneath the glamour. Lee Ara, masking suspicion behind a polite smile, remarked on the apparent harmony of his family, unaware of the orchestrated precision behind it. Hearing this, Kang Geon momentarily choked on his own spit, a fleeting jolt of self-consciousness piercing his otherwise composed demeanor. Somberly, he nodded in agreement, concealing the pride and satisfaction that quietly bubbled beneath the surface. Internally, he brimmed with quiet glee, attributing this seamless fabrication to his father comrade, the hidden genius shaping every digital thread. Evening descended, marking the end of the day as students dispersed, each retracing paths home under fading light. Kang Geon scanned the departing streets, noting the paths of the luxury cars ferrying the two girls, a silent map of societal hierarchy. His own anticipation simmered. Today, a new car awaited him, a tangible marker of his family's curated wealth and mission preparation. Just like yesterday, the black-haired girl passed by, a fleeting shadow in his peripheral vision, unspoken connections threading between them. And then Lee Ara appeared, crossing paths with the same subtle grace. She waved briefly, a small gesture signaling familiarity and recognition, a social currency in the intricate dance of high school hierarchy. Kang Geon's mind swelled with quiet smugness, noting the subtle interest and attention from these daughters of influence. Yet Hwang Woo-young's firm hand on his shoulder reminded him that personal whims were secondary. The mission dictated the path. Standing beside him, Hwang Woo-young and Go Jin-seok formed a silent barrier, their presence a mixture of threat and guidance. Their proximity exuded unspoken dominance, prompting him to question nothing aloud, tension humming in the air. Hwang Woo-young's warning was clear. Obedience first, inquiries later, an unspoken lesson in hierarchy and survival. Kang Geon recognized this as part of the mission's social code, a test of patience and adaptability in elite circles. With careful composure, he followed them toward the waiting G-Wagon, each step measured, each thought calculated. Suddenly, a roar split the evening air, a hot rod muscle car charging into the scene, a sudden burst of chaos amid controlled order. All heads turned instinctively, drawn to the sound, an interruption that shifted attention like a gust of wind across a calm field. The vehicle revealed itself a classic power muscle car, its presence raw and unrestrained, a stark contrast to the polished, orchestrated lives around it. It swerved sharply, tires screeching, and finally came to a stop directly in front of Kang Geon's school. Smoke billowed from its exhaust, curling into the air as onlookers froze, captivated by the sudden spectacle. With a loud pop, the door swung open to reveal Kang Geon's father, Comrade, stepping out with effortless authority. Silence hung over the crowd, disbelief etching itself across every face. None could fathom the audacity or grandeur of what had just unfolded before their eyes. Even Kang Geon himself felt the sharp sting of astonishment, the enormity of the moment anchoring him in place. Comrade's booming voice carried over the stunned crowd, reiterating his arrival, ensuring that even his son could hear. Without hesitation, Kang Geon surged toward his father, each step a mix of relief and recognition. Leaning close, he whispered urgent instructions, and Comrade's brief nod acknowledged understanding before a loud proclamation to the onlookers. Announcing his plan to depart in a friend's car, Comrade set the stage for a swift and unmistakable departure. Kang Geon exhaled deeply, a mixture of resignation and anticipation settling over him. Understanding the unspoken, Comrade shifted gears and revved the engine, a controlled torrent of motion and intent. The car surged forward, racing toward home as a promise of reunion and continued guidance. Within moments, the sleek vehicle vanished down the road, leaving a lingering sense of awe. Kang Geon released another long sigh, glancing back to gauge the reactions of his companions. Hwang Woo-young and Go Jin-seok seethed silently, their anger barely contained, each vein pulsing with restrained frustration. Once Comrade departed, Kang Geon settled into the car with Go Jin-seok and Hwang Woo-young, a tense quiet enveloping them. Words were absent. The ride carried a weight of unspoken calculations and suppressed tempers. Kang Geon's mind raced, wondering where they might be headed, while Hwang Woo-young's rising anger made every passing moment taut with tension. The vehicle finally stopped before an imposing high-rise, its glass facerod reflecting ambition and authority in equal measure. Stepping out, Kang Geon studied the building, curiosity sharpening his focus, each detail hinting at unseen power. The structure revealed itself as the TJ Sports Multi-Rise Building, a monument to influence and enterprise. Go Jin-seok strode ahead, instructing the others to proceed alone, bound by his own pressing obligations. Kang Geon paused, absorbing the weight of circumstance, a lone figure navigating the edges of a world he had yet to fully grasp. Suddenly, a bodyguard reminded him that orders had been given. Go Jin-seok and Hwang Woo-young demanded he remain under constant watch, tethered to their control. Kang Geon's eyes widened, uncertainty twisting in his chest as he struggled to understand what fate had in store for him within this unfamiliar domain. The guard led the way with unspoken authority, each step measured, compelling Kang Geon to follow silently behind. Inside, a vast training ground stretched before him, filled with boxers in relentless motion, each punch and jab echoing through the high-ceilinged hall. A flicker of thought passed through Kang Geon's mind, questioning whether he had wandered into some sort of clandestine arena. A figure approached and bowed, respect emanating in every movement, while Hwang Woo-young's voice cut through, inquiring if cage number 3 had been cleared as instructed. The man, anxious yet respectful, confirmed that his orders had been fulfilled, the tension in his posture betraying the gravity of the moment. Hwang Woo-young commanded that no one be allowed near the cage until his arrival, a subtle assertion of dominance over the unfolding scene. Leaning closer, the figure whispered to Kang Geon, suggesting he feign submission and prepare for the worst, hinting at an ambulance and the expectation of quick incapacitation. Kang Geon's mind raced, the mention of an ambulance leaving him puzzled, the reality of the situation beginning to crystallize. Hwang Woo-young's voice erupted with impatience, demanding Kang Geon step forward, the urgency sharp and uncompromising. In that instant, clarity struck. This was no friendly meeting, no casual confrontation. Every element radiated calculated threat. Before cage number 3, Hwang Woo-young began to prepare with methodical precision, stripping away uniform to reveal his fighting attire, while Kang Geon's bodyguard stood rigidly at his side. The school uniform was discarded, a symbolic shedding of civility in favor of raw, combative intent. Boxing gloves were fastened, a tangible promise of impending collision, each movement deliberate, measured. Kang Geon's gaze lingered on the array of equipment, the weight of its significance pressing against his chest. From the balcony above, Go Jin-seok appeared, his voice cutting through the tension, remarking on the rarity of such a serious expression entering the arena. Kang Geon's stoic composure met Go Jin-seok's observation, a silent acknowledgement of the gravity of the confrontation about to unfold between him and Hwang Woo-young. Confusion flickered across Go Jin-seok's face, questioning the nature of this so-called sparring sering his amusement threading through the tension. He laughed lightly, framing the coming battle as a form of sparring, though the undercurrent of threat made the words hollow. Kang Geon's stare remained fixed, unreadable, absorbing the weight of the arena and the stakes at hand. Go Jin-seok's smile took on a chilling edge as he insisted the rules be acknowledged through a signature, the formalities of consent undercutting the imminent violence. Momentary confusion struck Kang Geon, questioning the meaning of signing, until Hwang Woo-young gestured toward the document pinned to a nearby table. Stepping closer, Kang Geon's eyes scanned the document, every word settling heavily in his mind. Bold letters spelled out a mutual agreement. The sparring match was consensual, absolving all parties of responsibility for any injuries, from minor to severe, legal or criminal. A cold concern seeped in as Kang Geon grasped the implications of the Atso spar, his gaze locking on Hwang Woo-young, the existential weight of choice pressing down on him. Kang Ji-hoon reaffirmed the demand, pressing Kang Geon to sign the agreement with a cold finality. From above, Go Jin-seok called out with a mocking grin, questioning whether fear had already taken hold of him. Kang Geon responded with a sharp glare, irritation simmering beneath the surface. His expression twisted into something harsh as he suggested, almost cruelly, that an act of humiliating submission might earn forgiveness for now. The provocation only deepened Go Jin's anger, fueling a rising storm within him. Go Jin-seok watched, baffled that Kang Geon seemed unfazed by the threats, wondering if something was fundamentally off about him. Yet Kang Geon ignored the aggression entirely, asking instead whether the place had any form of CCTV surveillance. The unexpected question left Go Jin-seok and Hwang Woo-young momentarily stunned, thrown off by his calm focus. Without hesitation, Kang Geon signed the agreement. As he wrote his name, Go Jin-seok warned him again, insisting he was signing his own death sentence against a national-level fighter like Hwang Woo-young. Nearby, Hwang Woo-young cracked his knuckles with eager anticipation, already savoring the violence to come. Yet instead of backing away, Kang Geon simply handed the signed paper over, a quiet defiance settling around him. He began removing his outer layers and urged Hwang Woo-young to sign as well, signaling he was ready. A surge of internal resolve radiated from him, pushing Hwang Woo-young to hurry with his preparations. Once positioned, Hwang Woo-young cracked his neck, his body coiled for impact. Kang Geon mirrored him, shedding his sleeves and sliding on the gloves, settling into a stance shaped by instinct more than training. Throughout the preparations, he remained completely silent, retreating into his own internal battleground. Hwang Woo-young mocked the stillness, likening it to someone frozen by fear. His smug grin carried the confidence of someone convinced the fight was already won. Inside the ring, both fighters raised their guards, Hwang Woo-young stretching his muscles in slow, predatory movements. Meanwhile, Kang Geon's mind raced through possibilities, unsure yet determined, searching for the right path forward. He imagined opening with a direct jab to the face. But the image of devastating, irreversible injury made him abandon the idea, knowing the consequences would be far too severe. Next, he pictured slipping past the first incoming punch and moving to the side, testing another strategy in the theater of his mind. He envisioned delivering a precise uppercut to the ribs, weighing impact against harm. The thought of rupturing internal organs made him abandon the move, a constant balancing of power and restraint. Ideas of targeting the eyes were discarded, instinctively recognizing the line he could not cross. Attacks aimed at the groin were similarly dismissed, a measure of controlled calculation amidst rising tension. A roundhouse kick to the skull flashed in his mind, momentarily tempting with efficiency. Yet the prospect of permanent jaw damage ruled it out, reinforcing the invisible boundaries of restraint. Even breaking a knee was unacceptable. Each option weighed for consequence, not just effectiveness. He found himself trapped in a mental paradox. How to teach Huang Wuyang a lesson without crossing into irreversible harm? Huang Wuyang struck first, a right hook aimed sharply at Kang Geon's face. To Kang Geon, the punch seemed to arrive in slow motion, its danger rendered impotent by his calm perception. With minimal effort, he slipped aside, almost as if time had briefly bent to his advantage. Huang Wuyang followed with a straight left, attempting to pierce Kang Geon's defenses. Again, the blow approached with an almost unreal slowness, a stark contrast to the anticipated violence. Kang Geon evaded effortlessly, his body and mind perfectly synchronized in quiet mastery. Anxiety crept into Huang Wuyang's stance, his precision now met with inexplicable fluidity. Kang Geon remained stoic, a solid presence untouched by fear or anger, the eye of a silent storm. Observers, including Go Jin Seok and the bodyguard, were taken aback by this display, unprepared for such control. Go Jin Seok in particular appeared perplexed, his understanding of the fight's rhythm unraveling. Adjusting his approach, Huang Wuyang retreated several steps, seeking space to recalibrate. He created a measured distance, tension coiled like a spring, readying for a renewed assault. Poised, he leapt, questioning Kang Geon's experience in sports with veiled challenge. Kang Geon remained silent, the quiet itself an assertion more potent than words. Frustration built in Huang Wuyang. The mute resistance was an affront to his expectation of reaction. Kang Geon's emotionless face mocked the aggression, a calm mirror to Huang Wuyang's growing fury. The vein on Huang Wuyang's forehead throbbed with rising rage, a visible mark of internal struggle against controlled chaos. Huang Wuyang roared in fury, his right fist rising as he demanded an explanation for Kang Geon's unreadable expression. Just as he lunged, a sudden streak of motion cut across his vision, lightning fast and precise. It was Kang Geon's palm, delivering a sharp chop to Huang Wuyang's cheek, a silent assertion of controlled dominance. Shock rooted Huang Wuyang to the spot, disbelief mirrored in his wide eyes. The unexpected assault left Go Jin Seok and the bodyguard equally stunned, their composure fractured by the rapid turn of events. Consumed by rage, Huang Wuyang trembled, his fury spilling into curses aimed at Kang Geon. Yet Kang Geon's face remained a calm mask, fists ready, each breath measured, every movement deliberate. In a blind rush, Huang Wuyang surged forward, shouting threats that barely registered over the rhythm of his own heartbeat. Another lightning-fast chop struck the other cheek, precise and unyielding, halting the momentum of the enraged attacker. Huang Wuyang staggered, struggling to regain balance, while Kang Geon's stoic presence radiated an unshakable serenity. Frustration boiled over. Huang Wuyang's voice cracked as he vowed violence, blind to the escalating consequences. Before his words could land, a third strike hit, a precise slap that disrupted every shred of composure. His stance crumbled, the carefully maintained aggression dissolving into uncontrolled instability. Consciousness faded gradually, the impact of disciplined restraint evident in the slow surrender of his body. Knees buckled, and he collapsed. Defeated, the fight concluded in a surreal display of controlled power. In just 3 measured strikes, Huang Wuyang was rendered unconscious, a testament to Kang Geon's calculated precision. Witnesses, including Go Jin Seok and Huang Wuyang himself, were drenched in sweat, their minds struggling to comprehend the sudden turn. Kang Geon, in quiet triumph, allowed himself a mocking inner declaration. The lesson was delivered, gently yet decisively. With the task seemingly complete, he moved to open the cage door, ready to exit, only to be halted by Go-jin Seok's commanding voice. Confusion flickered across Kang Geon's features. The purpose of this new restriction eluded him. From the balcony, Go-jin Seok descended with urgency, landing before Kang Geon in a surge of intent. Approaching with decisive steps, he proclaimed that Kang Geon would serve as his right-hand man from this moment forward. The declaration left Kang Geon bewildered, struggling to parse its meaning amidst the adrenaline and tension. Seeking affirmation, Go-jin Seok queried his bodyguard about Kang Geon's strength. Even the seasoned guard fell silent, unable to speak. In his confusion, Kang Geon silently wondered what a "all right-hand mana" truly entailed, the weight of expectation settling around him. Kang Geon moved closer, quietly acknowledging that being Go-jin Seok's right hand was a position of weight and subtle authority, not a simple favor. He understood, with silent calculation, that the gravity of this role stemmed from the power and influence of Go-jin Seok's family, a legacy he could not ignore. With a subtle, almost playful nod, Kang Geon masked the gravity of his thoughts behind a light expression, a delicate balance of awareness and restraint. Go-jin Seok placed a friendly hand on his shoulder, guiding him toward a lavish restaurant, a gesture both casual and loaded with implication. Kang Geon's mind raced, questioning how events had aligned so perfectly, as if the strands of fate had woven themselves without his intervention. He marveled at the uncanny synchronicity of the plan unfolding seamlessly, each step falling into place despite the complexity of the mission. Returning home that night, he announced his arrival, the familiar walls offering a temporary refuge from the intricate social maneuvers of the day. Across the room, his father's calm inquiry about his friendships was met with a quiet affirmation, a small but meaningful reassurance. His mother's question about dinner floated in the room, a domestic anchor amidst the whirlwind of his thoughts and schemes. Kang Geon declined politely, noting he had eaten earlier with a friend, retreating instead to the contemplative solitude of his room. Concern flickered in his parents' expressions, wondering at the subtle changes in behavior, unaware of the mental and strategic exertion behind it. He sank onto his bed with a heavy sigh, the weight of strategy, observation, and anticipation pressing on him in quiet intensity. Thoughts swirled, reflecting on how deceptively difficult the mission had become, each interaction demanding precision and foresight. Hours earlier, in a high-class restaurant, Kang Geon sat across from Go-jin Seok, the ambiance of wealth and refinement sharpening the contrast with the calculated social dance ahead. The table displayed delicacies with an almost ceremonial allure. Go-jin Seok's gestures carried lessons wrapped in courtesy, a subtle education in status and influence. Generosity was offered alongside instruction. Kang Geon accepted a portion, the act of eating intertwined with observing, calculating, and internalizing nuances. The first bite revealed an unexpected richness, the flavor almost overwhelming, a sensory reflection of the opulence surrounding him. His astonishment at the quality of the food mirrored his awareness of the elevated social plane he now navigated, each sensation tied to new responsibilities. Go-jin Seok chuckled at the subtle marvel, a lighthearted acknowledgement of Kang Geon's genuine reactions, revealing a more human side beneath the veneer of power. Kang Geon recalled the same man's earlier expressions of authority and intensity, astonished at the fluidity between dominance and casual warmth. The conversation shifted to business. Being a right-hand man was framed not as privilege, but as a conduit for influence, strategy, and delicate power management. Kang Geon swallowed hard, the sudden pivot forcing him to reconcile the duality of camaraderie and obligation in his role. Go-jin Seok outlined the subtle principle of control. Only those who threaten the hierarchy warrant intervention, a calculus of power that Kang Geon quietly absorbed. Accepting a second bite, Kang Geon mused on the ethics implicit in power, rejecting harm toward the weak as inconsequential in this particular hierarchy. Go-jin Seok clarified that only those who challenged the status quo mattered. Yet Kang Geon mentally contested this, reflecting on exceptions like Jung Dong-woo, where nuance complicated the simple rules of dominance. Go Jin-seok paused, trying to piece together Kang Geon's reference, until the memory of Jang Dong-woo, the black-haired boy whose eyes were hidden by his hair, surfaced. Kang Geon silently confirmed that he was indeed speaking of that boy, the weight of his observation lingering in the air. Go Jin-seok laughed heartily, the sound echoing with incredulity at Kang Geon's earlier assumption of weakness in Jang Dong-woo. He explained that Jang Dong-woo was far from weak, recalling a time when Kang Geon's mentor had once been the boy's subordinate, a mere errand boy during middle school. Kang Geon's eyes widened, a surge of astonishment rippling through him as the layers of hierarchy revealed themselves. Go Jin-seok elaborated, describing the role of a shuttle, an errand boy, a vessel of obedience, someone whose identity was subsumed under another's will. Regaining a serious composure, he contextualized Jang Dong-woo's family influence, a legal dynasty whose patriarch held the powerful title of Central District Prosecutor General. Before his own father rose to prominence, Go Jin-seok had been forced to observe and serve Jang Dong-woo meticulously, bound by societal hierarchies he could not alter. Kang Geon felt a mixture of shock and realization, the truth of power and legacy striking him with quiet intensity. Go Jin-seok's expression darkened as he spoke of life in Korea, a place where parental authority often dictated the trajectory of one's existence, a legacy inherited by birthright. Kang Geon remained silent, his usual reserved demeanor masking the profound internal reckoning unfolding within him. Returning to the present, he reflected again on the mission before him, the invisible weights of strategy and observation pressing heavily on his mind. The realization settled. This undertaking was far from simple. Each step demanded foresight, patience, and careful navigation of unseen social currents. Lost in thought and sighing deeply, Kang Geon sensed a presence at his door, a gentle interruption to his solitude. Rising, he moved to see who had arrived, curiosity tempered by habitual caution. At the doorway stood his parents, their faces etched with quiet concern, silently gauging the emotional toll of his day. Kang Geon paused, momentarily unsure how to respond to the subtle weight of their gaze, a mixture of expectation and care. Both parents, with tentative voices and measured expressions, offered him the chance to share any burdens, their presence a steadying force. He remained still, his habitual reticence holding firm, words withheld behind the calm veneer of his usual quietude. Collecting himself, he assured them that all was well, a polite affirmation that allowed the parents to step inside, though their unease lingered. Despite entering the room, their expressions betrayed dissatisfaction, silent acknowledgement that his assurance was incomplete. Kang Geon recognized that a simple declaration of all is fine would not suffice. Honesty, subtle and measured, was required. Shifting his gaze, he began to articulate the intricate challenges he had faced, attempting to translate experience into words. He confessed that South Korean society felt labyrinthine, a complex network of rules, hierarchies, and unspoken expectations, starkly different from all he had learned before. His parents remained quiet, mirroring his solemnity. The room steeped in reflective silence as the weight of societal understanding settled around them. Fidgeting with his fingers, Kang Geon admitted inwardly how difficult it was to adapt, feeling the weight of unfamiliar customs pressing on him. His father, Comrade, bore a stern gaze, warning him against speaking like a weakling, a reminder that resilience was expected, not optional. He challenged Kang Geon, asking if he had forgotten the legacy he carried, a reminder that identity was inseparable from duty. The realization struck Kang Geon like a sudden gust, leaving him momentarily stunned as the gravity of his position settled in. Father Comrade's expression was unyielding and grim, an immovable pillar demanding discipline and clarity of purpose. Kang Geon flinched at the sight, fully aware of the silent authority conveyed by that unwavering stare. Straightening to attention, he vowed silently to prevent any lapse, committing himself fully to excellence and vigilance. His parents' faces softened, a small smile breaking through their concern, acknowledging the emergence of his determination. Kang Geon's resolve solidified, a quiet fire kindling within him, fueled by the challenges he had faced and the lessons he had absorbed. That night, he immersed himself in research, diving into the intricacies of South Korean society with meticulous focus. Every detail mattered: music preferences, the role of shuttles, economic structures, and social hierarchies. He absorbed it all with unwavering concentration. As he internalized the information, he reminded himself of his identity as North Korea's elite anti-South Special Operations Shadow Unit agent, a standard of perfection impossible to compromise. The possibility of failure was inconceivable. Every action had weight. Every decision mattered. His parents observed quietly, pride and approval softening their faces as they witnessed his renewed confidence and discipline. The next day, he sat in school, positioning himself strategically behind Jang Dong-woo, observing and assessing the environment with calculated patience. Jang Dong-woo noticed the steady gaze and grew slightly uneasy, sensing the silent scrutiny behind him. Curiosity mixed with concern, he wondered about the aftermath of Kang Geon's encounter with Hwang Woo-young at the fighting arena, questioning whether he was truly unharmed. Even when told to maintain composure, he struggled to reconcile the derpy exterior with the rumors of past leadership, doubting the truth of his own memories. Seeking clarity, he asked directly if Kang Geon had ever been a gang leader, his voice carrying the tension of disbelief and cautious intrigue. Kang Geon explained the connection to Go Jin Seok, recounting the errand boy dynamic and the lessons embedded within that hierarchy. Jang Dong-woo reacted with panic, insisting that youth had obscured his understanding of the world and that he was no longer that person. Kang Geon reassured him, emphasizing that no one in his present circle was subjected to servitude or subjugation, restoring a sense of equilibrium. With a confident smile and a subtle thumbs up, Kang Geon conveyed that their bond was now one of equals, cementing an unexpected friendship. Jang Dong-woo, overwhelmed and unable to process the situation, yielded silently, letting the moment pass without further questioning. Internally, Kang Geon reveled in the naturalness of the exchange, a quiet smugness arising from his ability to navigate the delicate social terrain with ease. Jang Dong-woo remained silent, only managing a quiet affirmation, caught between curiosity and disbelief. In the next moment, Go Jin Seok crossed the classroom toward his seat, prompting Jang Dong-woo to avert his gaze. Unwilling to engage directly, Go Jin Seok offered no acknowledgement, moving silently through the rows with a composed purpose. Kang Geon, maintaining his self-proclaimed flawless composure, reassured the hesitant Jang Dong-woo that stability and camaraderie would soon prevail. He silently affirmed that true friendship would now weave itself among them, a subtle yet profound shift in the classroom dynamics. Later, Go Jin Seok called out, directing attention to Kang Geon, signaling a new level of engagement. Turning, Kang Geon met Go Jin Seok's gaze, who waited expectantly, seeking a response that could solidify their growing bond. Offering a warm, amicable smile, Kang Geon acknowledged the previous night's dinner, silently expressing gratitude and consideration. Go Jin Seok returned the friendly gesture, reinforcing the tentative bridge of mutual respect between them. The class watched in astonishment, the girls whispering among themselves at the unexpected warmth between the two boys. Even Jang Dong-woo's expression betrayed surprise, a silent witness to the subtle reshuffling of influence and respect. The attention of the top-performing students further underscored the subtle but undeniable shift in social order. Rising from his stool, Kang Geon approached Go Jin Seok with confidence, suggesting he would reciprocate the gesture next time, projecting poise and assurance. Go Jin Seok directed him to the seat to his right, a subtle gesture signaling trust and recognition within the classroom hierarchy. Kang Geon realized with quiet astonishment that the seat belonged to Hwang Woo-young, now offered to him, a tangible acknowledgement of his newfound status. Sensing hesitation, Go Jin Seok questioned the delay, puzzled by Kang Geon's momentary pause in the face of opportunity. Kang Geon processed the transformation unfolding before him, the subtle yet significant power shift crystallizing in his mind. He recognized the hierarchy had shifted. Within a single day, he had ascended to the position of second in command, a realization both thrilling and sobering. Pride guiding his steps, he confidently approached the newly assigned seat, the weight of authority settling on him. Sitting down with a triumphant expression, he exuded both smug satisfaction and quiet dominance, fully aware of the social victory he had achieved. A chuckle escaped him, low but resonant, marking the moment as a personal triumph that echoed subtly across the room. Inside, Kang Geon's mind danced with the satisfaction of seeing his carefully laid plans unfold with precision. Soon, the English teacher resumed the lesson, guiding the class through poetry with measured patience, unaware of the shifting currents in the back. The next period brought an elderly teacher discussing geography, the mundane rhythms of the classroom continuing amidst the undercurrents of hierarchy and strategy. Amidst the routine, Kang Geon noticed an empty seat, Hwang Woo-young's absence, a silent reminder of unresolved tensions and the fragile nature of status. Eyes fixed on the empty seat, Kang Geon felt a flicker of unease, questioning if his restraint had been enough or if Hwang Woo-young's absence signaled something far graver. The scene shifted abruptly to the towering structure of TJ Sports, a realm where discipline and power collided. Inside the sprawling courtrooms, the echo of relentless blows resonated, a rhythm of pain that permeated the space. At the center, enclosed in a cage, Hwang Woo-young lay planking, his body trembling with every surge of agony. A sharp strike to his waist with a wooden sword sent a scream tearing from him, the intensity of punishment undeniable. Pain racked his frame, forcing him to writhe across the floor, clutching his midsection as the world blurred in discomfort. Amidst the groans, a voice cut through the torment, questioning his worth and mocking his inability to endure even a simple trial. The figure wielding the sword was an elder, commanding presence, instructing him toward the special path of duty and obedience. That elder revealed himself as Hwang Woo-young's father, the TJ Sports chairman, his growl steeped in the frustration of wasted investment and squandered potential. A secretary interceded, pleading for mercy, insisting the lesson had already been received. Relenting, the chairman delivered his mandate: the family would ascend to the presidency in the next election, and Hwang Woo-young must attach himself to that ambition, unwavering and relentless. He emphasized the necessity of servile flattery, a reminder that loyalty and strategy demanded subjugation when required. Turning away with palpable disgust, the chairman ordered Hwang Woo-young to depart, his anger so potent that mere presence provoked it. Alone, Hwang Woo-young rose, his mind a storm of fury and contemplation, processing the weight of both punishment and expectation. As he retreated from the cage, the chairman inquired with the secretary about Kang Geon's lineage, curiosity tempered with suspicion. He demanded a meticulous report on Kang Geon's family, their power, influence, and societal standing. The secretary explained the family's ownership of a multinational enterprise specializing in cryptocurrency and security programs, their market presence formidable yet abstract to the elder. Confusion flickered in the chairman's eyes as he struggled to grasp the concept of digital currency and its implications. The secretary elaborated, noting the company's impressive market capitalization and strategic significance, hinting at power that was subtle yet potent. The chairman, intrigued and wary, commanded that Kang Geon's parents be invited to dinner, a meeting under his direct supervision. The secretary, uncertain yet dutiful, sought guidance on the location for the event. With a predatory, bloodlust-laden grin, the chairman decreed that the gym itself would host the dinner, blending hospitality with silent intimidation. The secretary hesitated, perplexed by the audacity and symbolism of the chosen venue. Yielding to authority, he bowed deeply, pledging to fulfill the chairman's wishes without question. Muttering under his breath, the chairman seethed at the audacity of outsiders encroaching on his domain, a quiet storm of power, pride, and paranoia. Back at school, Lee Ara's warm, amicable smile reached Kang Geon, a quiet reminder of bonds that extended beyond the chaos, signaling a meeting for the next day. The bodyguard bowed in acknowledgement of her efforts, a silent exchange of respect, which she returned with equal grace. One bodyguard's attention shifted toward Go-jin Seok and Kang Geon, who walked together in measured steps, shadows of strategy and companionship intertwined. Wrestling briefly with the weight of interference, he ultimately offered a small counsel to Kang Geon: protect one's parents, a subtle reminder of roots and responsibility. Confusion flickered across Kang Geon's face, the meaning of the advice settling slowly into his mind, like a whisper of duty he had yet to fully grasp. Crossing paths with Gojin Seok, he received a cordial farewell, a simple wish to meet tomorrow, grounding the storm of thoughts around him. As Gojin Seok and the bodyguard departed toward the waiting car, Kang Geon's mind lingered on the earlier words about protecting his parents, the weight of them pressing quietly. Memories and caution merged in his thoughts, the fleeting advice echoing as he pondered his responsibilities beyond immediate battles. A scarlet hot rod rolled to a stop before him, its presence commanding attention, signaling the arrival of another phase in his life. Inside, his father, the comrade, waited, inviting him into the car, a silent call to continue the journey, to embrace the roles he was yet to fully understand. Kang Geon exhaled deeply, a long sigh carrying the weight of thought and anticipation, bracing himself for the next moment. At the dinner table, his parents' laughter mingled with conversation, warmth, and ease contrasting sharply with his own silence. A quiet island amid familial familiarity. He ate methodically, disengaged from the chatter, the usual introspection cloaking him even in the midst of domestic normalcy. His mother's giddy talk floated around him, a gentle rhythm he barely registered, absorbed in contemplation. Abruptly, the doorbell rang, slicing through the calm, injecting tension into the evening as questions and uncertainty settled over the room. The family exchanged puzzled glances while Kang Geon, cheeks full, froze mid-bite, caught between instinct and manners. Both parents moved simultaneously to open the door, a mirrored motion of curiosity and caution. Standing outside were Hwang Weiyang's father and secretary, their presence formal and commanding, bowing politely in acknowledgement. The secretary introduced himself as a representative of the TJ Group's office, the weight of the organization palpable in his measured tone. Kang Geon froze, the gravity of the moment settling over him, while his parents greeted the visitors with warmth, unaware of the storm about to unfold. Confusion clouded Kang Geon's mind. Why had Hwang Weiyang's secretary come directly to their home, bypassing all customary channels? Without preamble, the secretary's words cut straight to the point. Their young master had been assaulted by Kang Geon. Shock rippled through the room, freezing the trio in place, the weight of accusation heavy and sudden. All eyes turned to Kang Geon, demanding clarity, seeking an explanation that he had yet to form. Sweat poured unbidden as he stood, caught between the incomprehensible accusation and the urgent need to account for his actions. Reassuring them that no harm was intended, the secretary emphasized that the chairman sought only a dinner meeting, not escalation, framing the encounter as formal yet benign. Relief spread across the family's faces. The father's quiet amusement noting that conflicts like these were commonplace among youth, a gentle attempt to normalize the tension. The secretary pressed gently, urging a prompt departure, the urgency of time pressing lightly against the formality of the visit. The father readily consented, embracing the invitation, bridging the distance between caution and courtesy. Anxiety flickered in Kang Geon's mind, a quiet storm of anticipation about the unknown dynamics awaiting at the dinner. Suppressing his concern, he followed at a measured pace, each step a quiet rehearsal of composure. Yet his father's stern command held him back, a deliberate separation from the unfolding encounter, layering the night with tension. Shock rippled through Kang Geon and his mother, the unanticipated restriction amplifying the sense of vulnerability in the moment. As the door closed behind the departing pair, a quiet isolation settled over Kang Geon, the house exhaling into silence. Father Comrade and the secretary arrived at the TJ Sports high-rise, the building looming with quiet authority, signaling the gravity of the meeting. Inside, the secretary guided them toward the chairman's quarters, a silent procession through the corridors of power. They approached the chairman, seated by a cage, his gaze sharp, measuring the lone visitor against expectation. Noting the absence of the full family, the chairman's glare sharpened, a subtle reminder of perceived slight and hierarchy. His voice carried an edge of restrained anger, recalling the beating his child had endured at Kang Geon's hands, a pointed assertion of authority. The father's composed, almost smug demeanor met the accusation silently, a calculated calm amid tension. Rising from the cage, the chairman advanced, closing the distance with each step, interrogating and subtly threatening the father under the guise of courtesy. Maintaining poise, Father Comrade countered with measured words, offering compliance to reasonable requests, a negotiation tempered by dignity. The chairman demanded the transfer of his child to another school, framing it as the price of leniency. Firm yet polite, Father Comrade refused, invoking the mother's wish and the effort invested, asserting a boundary even under pressure. Frustration flickered across the chairman's face, his sigh echoing impatience and the weight of expectation. He advanced once more, a looming presence, each step amplifying the tension in the narrow space between authority and resistance. His imposing stature carried a silent threat, signaling that compliance was preferable to confrontation, a power play couched in civility. Veins protruded in the chairman's face, rage simmering beneath a facade of composure, signaling the volatility of his authority. Father Comrade's expression stiffened, his tone hardening, warning of mutual consequences should aggression continue, a final attempt at restraint. Before words could fully form, the tension erupted physically. The chairman struck, a sudden, shocking assertion of dominance that shattered the fragile negotiation. Yet Father Comrade did not flinch. His gaze remained steady, a quiet defiance embedded in the depths of his expression. The stark contrast between expectation and reality unsettled the chairman, who studied the calm resolve before him with growing confusion. Blow after relentless blow fell, each strike testing endurance and resolve, a brutal rhythm punctuating the room. The punishment was merciless, driving Father Comrade to his knees, the weight of authority pressing on every fiber of his being. Seizing him by the hair, the chairman forced an intimate confrontation, a warning etched in proximity and menace. The ultimatum hung heavy in the air: comply and transfer the child, or face obliteration, a total erasure of presence and influence. With finality, the chairman slammed his head to the ground, enforcing words with violence, a stark testament to unchecked power. Further assaults continued, though tempered by instruction. The secretary was ordered to ensure compensation, medical and financial, a paradox of brutality and provision. The secretary escorted the battered father back to their apartment, a quiet shadow trailing behind the physical scars. Before departure, 3 large checks were handed over, a hollow gesture attempting to quantify pain and suffering. They were labeled for medical expenses, a sterile reconciliation for what could not be undone. Father Comrade regarded the checks with a somber stillness, the weight of the encounter pressing deeper than any currency could measure. Mockery accompanied the secretary's words, taunting the insufficiency of compensation in the face of humiliation. He warned against seeking justice through official channels, reminding that influence and corruption shielded the powerful. The TJ Company's reach extended through law enforcement, a chilling reinforcement of control and inevitability. In silence, Father Comrade acknowledged the truth, the necessity of endurance over complaint, turning away with quiet resolve. Even the medical provisions were grasped in anger, refused as he reclaimed dignity over imposed charity. Wounded and weary, he trudged home, each step a testament to resilience, the secretary trailing in silent observation. Behind him, quiet barbs and derision lingered in the air, reminders of the unspoken contempt he endured. Step by painful step, he drew closer to home, the journey a measured reclaiming of self amidst lingering humiliation. Kang Geon's heart leapt at the sight of his father's battered form, the pain etched visibly in every motion. Both mother and son were frozen, shock rendering words meaningless as they absorbed the severity of the injuries. Kang Geon moved to intervene, but Father Comrade's silent insistence forbade assistance, teaching endurance even in private struggle. Worry gnawed at Kang Geon, a helpless tension counterbalanced by his mother's fiery gaze. Anger surged through her, raw and uncontained, radiating a protective fury that filled the space, demanding recognition of injustice. He stormed back into his room, hands trembling as he powered up his computer, each click echoing the urgency of his thoughts. Multiple windows sprang to life on his console, a chaotic digital landscape, while he silently cursed the chairman for underestimating the storm he had unleashed. Blood streaked across his lips, wiped away with a clenched jaw, his eyes burning with determination and suppressed fury. The scene shifts to the heart of the TJ Company headquarters, a stark contrast of calm before the impending chaos. On the topmost floor, soothing music floated through the air, an attempt to mask the tension beneath the glass and steel. The chairman sat leisurely, sipping tea, his posture a fragile illusion of control over an empire he believed unshakable. But tranquility was short-lived, a prelude to a cascade of unforeseen disruption. A loud, urgent banging shattered the quiet. The secretary's frantic voice warned of a monumental problem. The chairman, initially bemused, questioned the commotion, unaccustomed to interruptions of this magnitude. Terror painted the secretary's expression as he revealed that the company's entire server network had collapsed. Further confusion mounted. The IT team was paralyzed, their own systems rendered useless, the machinery of control unraveling before him. Compounding the chaos, transactional portals failed, and refund inquiries flooded in unchecked, a tidal wave of digital disruption. The chairman's phone shrilled, cutting through the mounting panic like an omen. He answered, bracing for disaster, the air thick with anticipation and dread. Another urgent report arrived, a relentless cascade of problems multiplying faster than comprehension could keep up. An accountant confirmed the worst. The bank had frozen all accounts, a financial stranglehold that left the chairman reeling in disbelief. Rage and confusion contorted his face. The empire he thought secure now slipped like sand through his fingers. The immensity of the chaos was blinding, every alert a dagger to the illusion of control he had so carefully curated. Helplessness crept in, the chairman paralyzed by the scale and speed of the unraveling. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the next room, disrupting the hierarchy of fear and authority. Assuming it was another subordinate, he demanded a solution, a way to regain control over the spiraling disaster. Silence answered him. Confusion flickered as he turned to see who had entered unannounced. It was Mother Comrade, standing poised in black leather, her presence exuding command and lethal precision. The chairman's disbelief and indignation surfaced, questioning how security could allow such a figure free passage. Her response was icy and absolute. She had neutralized everyone, leaving the path clear for her intervention. She revealed that every CCTV had been disabled, leaving the building in a deceptive silence. Every living presence, even the security guards, lay dormant, oblivious to the storm about to unfold. Rising to assert authority, the chairman's voice trembled with stress and disbelief, unsure whether to be angry or terrified. In an instant, she seized him by the collar with an unyielding grip. His head slammed onto the table, the impact jarring, reality fracturing around him. Pain and confusion merged, comprehension fled as he struggled to understand the events unfolding. From her leather jacket, she revealed a weapon, a cold reminder of the power she wielded, warning him of the danger he underestimated. The chairman's body betrayed him, sweat pouring, immobilized by fear as the object became clear. It was a syringe, the slender vessel of a potent neurotoxin, a quiet harbinger of incapacitation. Fear froze him. Her words carried the weight of death, though she chose restraint, a perverse mercy. Without hesitation, she drove the syringe into his carotid vein, precision meeting inevitability. The toxin promised sleep, a 3-year exile from consciousness, sparing their child until graduation. The chairman's final vision before surrendering to darkness was her eyes demonic, unflinching, a reflection of judgment. Dawn broke as if nothing had transpired. Kang Geon prepared for school, the weight of yesterday resting only in memory. He informed his parents of his departure, voice carrying habitual routine rather than expectation. Silence met him. Curiosity drew his gaze back toward them, revealing traces of yesterday's struggle. His father sat, face battered yet composed, a quiet monument to resilience. His mother approached, warmth radiating as she offered a heartfelt goodbye, while his father's wave acknowledged both care and distance. Overcome by the aftermath, Kang Geon offered apologies, burdened by the chaos he had inadvertently caused. Yet his mother's reassuring smile dispelled guilt, affirming that the mess was handled and he need only live his day. Confusion flickered across his mind, but his mother's gentle giggle and father's pragmatic calm grounded him, bridging the chasm of yesterday's ordeal. The scene shifted seamlessly to the school campus, where life flowed in routine, untouched by the turbulence behind closed doors. Students murmured quietly, small conversations filling classrooms with an ordinary cadence that contrasted with Kang Geon's inner turbulence. Liara's gaze found him, a bright beacon amidst the quiet, pulling his attention outward. Her smile radiated warmth and recognition, her hand lifted in greeting, a simple connection anchoring him to normalcy. Kang Geon returned Liara's gesture with a polite smile and a wave. Yet beneath the surface, his mind turned over the cultural chasm, marveling at how South Korean parents inserted themselves into every aspect of their children's lives, a stark contrast to his North Korean upbringing. Lost in reflection, he was jolted by Go Jin Seok, whose call pulled him back to the immediacy of unfolding events. Go Jin Seok revealed that Hwang Woo-young's father had collapsed, shaking the foundation of the company and unsettling everyone connected to it. Shock coursed through Kang Geon. The timing was too precise, too deliberate to be mere coincidence, igniting the gears of suspicion in his mind. Reports of stroke or heart attack did not satisfy him. He instinctively knew something far more calculated had occurred. The earlier words of reassurance, the cryptic and a "don't worry, just go to school," suddenly crystallized in his mind as part of a larger, hidden plan. Even so, he shook his head, resisting the implausibility of attributing so much to coincidence. Thoughts still tangled, he was interrupted by Liara's cheerful presence. She approached with the casual lightness of adolescence, inquiring about his weekend plans, an ordinary question loaded with unseen significance. Go Jin Seok interjected, seeking her confirmation about inviting Kang Geon to her birthday. Liara's agreement brought a subtle warmth into the tense air. Go Jin Seok's expression flickered with complexity, the silent weight of judgment mingling with curiosity. Kang Geon felt a flicker of surprise, unaccustomed to such invitations, a small yet disarming gesture in the landscape of his chaotic life. Liara repeated her question, ensuring clarity, a soft insistence that he truly intended to attend. His smile, genuine and bright, affirmed his agreement. Hers mirrored relief and joy as she waved and departed, leaving a trace of normalcy behind. Once she had gone, Go Jin Seok's gaze returned to Kang Geon, a silent measure of observation, weighing thought against action. Words were unnecessary. The unspoken complexity hung in the air, heavy with unvoiced understanding. The door opened, and Hwang Woo-young entered, his usual composure shattered, each staggered step betraying inner turmoil. Seeing the pair, he recoiled inwardly, a shadow of fear and recognition overtaking his posture. Unaware of him, Go Jin Seok and Kang Geon continued their own world, one absorbed by the glow of a phone, the other seated with quiet intent. Liara, sensing tension, directed a concerned glance toward Hwang Woo-young, asking after his father, but he offered no response, passing silently. He moved to the seat that awaited him, empty and accusatory, as though echoing yesterday's events. Sitting down, he remained mute, a figure etched with unresolved sorrow. The sadness in his expression spoke volumes, a quiet testament to turmoil beneath controlled surfaces. Kang Geon's eyes lingered, absorbing the silent gravity of Hwang Woo-young's presence, reflecting on the delicate interweaving of power, fear, and consequence. When the final bell rang, Kang Geon lingered at the bus stop, expecting his father, the familiar weight of routine giving him a small sense of stability. Minutes passed, and unease crept in. His father had not arrived, a subtle disturbance in the rhythm of his day. The memory of last night's brutal events flashed in his mind, sharp and unavoidable, pulling him back into the grim reality he had narrowly survived. Suddenly, the reason for his father's absence became clear. The injuries he had sustained likely prevented him from driving. Resigned yet determined, Kang Geon began the walk toward home, each step a quiet meditation on vulnerability and endurance. A voice called out, breaking his introspection and momentarily lifting the shadow of solitude. It came from one of the front bench students, part of a familiar group who often shared fleeting moments of camaraderie. They inquired whether he was heading home alone, the casual concern carrying an unexpected warmth. Surprised by the invitation, he paused, weighing the offer before giving a measured acknowledgement that he was indeed alone. The middle girl quickly extended an invitation for him to join their group on the bus ride, offering inclusion where isolation might have lingered. After a brief hesitation, he accepted, letting himself be drawn into a small pocket of ordinary human connection. Smiles and introductions followed, their cheerful energy a stark contrast to the heaviness he carried within. The first friend, Seo Dongjun, offered a friendly nod, grounding Kang Geon in the simple act of recognition. The second, Jeon Yeju, marked with freckles, brought a light-hearted presence that softened the tension around him. Overwhelmed by the unassuming kindness, Kang Geon returned greetings, a quiet participant in the ease of their camaraderie. Curiosity prompted them to ask where his home was, a casual question that unexpectedly revealed the weight of his hidden status. Naming Banpo Blue Tower drew audible shock from the group, their astonishment a reflection of the luxurious world he inhabited silently. Jeon Yeju blinked, puzzled by the intense reaction, unaware of the social and material gravity behind the name. The others quickly explained the prestige and opulence of the address, highlighting a world of privilege Kang Geon had never openly shared. Gathering their composure, they saw the advantage their homes aligned along the same bus route, a serendipitous connection threading their paths together. The first friend suggested a detour, pointing to a tteokbokki restaurant just outside the academy, an invitation steeped in youthful excitement. Hearing the unfamiliar name, Kang Geon remained composed, the stranger's promise of culinary delight tugging at curiosity without breaking his measured calm. The friend's enthusiastic endorsement reminded him of the cultural chasm he straddled, a foreigner learning the nuances of a world simultaneously alien and fascinating. The bus carried them along, each stop a quiet rehearsal of observation, reflection, and fleeting connection. Soon, the group arrived at the tteokbokki place, its bustling exterior promising small joys amidst the weight of his thoughts. The restaurant pulsed with life, a swirl of students, adults, and groups of friends, all moving through the crowded space, their chatter forming a backdrop to Kang Geon's quiet observations. Within moments, the group's table was transformed, a bounty of dishes laid out like a colorful, chaotic tapestry of flavors awaiting exploration. The freckles girl and the glasses-wearing boy dove in, their reactions immediate and unrestrained, faces lighting up as the flavors struck with joyous intensity. Laughter and teasing filled the table, stories mingling with bites of food, but a subtle pause caught the first girl's attention. Kang Geon seemed distant, holding his food but untouched by the ritual of eating. Concern edged her voice as she asked whether he had never tasted tteokbokki before, sensing his unfamiliarity with the local cuisine. Caught between pride and curiosity, he denied it quickly, though internally bracing for the inevitable sensory shock. The first bite unleashed a torrent of taste, an intensity that overtook his senses, forcing an involuntary reaction he could neither contain nor anticipate. Flames of surprise escaped him comically, eliciting startled laughter from everyone nearby, the room's energy shifting between amusement and mild chaos. Milk was offered, laughter persisted, and gentle teasing punctuated the moment, his naivety a temporary bridge between worlds, highlighting the delicate interplay of culture and experience. Even the glasses-wearing friend laughed uncontrollably, while Kang Geon quietly endured the burn, the physical pain mirrored by a sudden humility in a foreign space. Laughter subsided into a steady camaraderie. The small group's bonds solidified over shared jokes, bites of food, and the comfort of simple presence. Setting down his glass, he silently acknowledged the first friend's thoughtful gesture, the milk soothing both his tongue and his momentary disorientation. Changing pace, the freckles girl shared her surprise that he might never fit in with them, a notion that stirred quiet confusion within him. The glasses boy clarified, painting a picture of his past social orbit around the elite circles, Jin Seok and Hwang Woyang's crowd, a world apart from ordinary school life. The first friend emphasized that despite their lineage and connections, these top shot Soy were no match for the authentic bonds and presence of her own friend group. Kang Geon absorbed their words silently, struggling to grasp the subtleties of social hierarchy that were invisible in his structured, mission-focused life. His request for clarification softened the first friend's expression, a fleeting shadow of seriousness crossing her features. She confessed how observing the top-tier students had often made her feel small, highlighting the subtle, unspoken pressures of competition and status. The Freckles girl intervened with spirited encouragement, reminding her that despite feeling overshadowed, her accomplishments and presence were formidable in their own right. A blush of modesty accompanied her words. She dismissed the praise, explaining her efforts were a buffer against the impending departure of the elite students to foreign universities. Kang Geon listened quietly, the perspectives of these ordinary students revealing a layer of human struggle he had rarely encountered in his mission-driven existence. He realized these friends were unrecorded in any files, ordinary South Korean students whose lives unfolded without the shadows of political or military expectation. Conversation flowed, punctuated by laughter, until the intrusion of louder voices pulled attention, a disruptive energy that reshaped the calm atmosphere. A group from a local high school barged in, their comments laced with disdain, targeting the wealthier international students occupying a public space with ease. The casual jabs unsettled the group, a stark reminder that wealth and status could provoke scrutiny and challenge even in spaces meant for leisure. Kang Geon's expression froze in raw confusion, a mixture of shock and disbelief painting his features, as if the situation before him defied all reason. The local students continued their harassment, voices sharp with resentment, complaining about the presence of wealthy outsiders and the imagined encroachment on their space. Their accusations were baseless, absurd even, as the restaurant's empty seats far outnumbered the crowd, but their frustration held a weight that demanded attention. His three companions remained silent, absorbing the verbal abuse with a mix of restraint and tension, unwilling to confront the escalating hostility. Geon, however, felt a surge of protective anger, a fire ignited not for himself but for the friends being taunted, a silent vow to defend them. One of the local students pressed further, invoking social etiquette, attempting to force acknowledgement from the international group and escalate their discomfort. Geon's patience snapped, his fury simmering, recognizing the intrusion as more than just words. It was a violation of the fragile peace they had carved together. Attempting to prevent an escalation, the glasses-wearing friend rose, suggesting they quietly leave, but the tension clung stubbornly to the air. Kang Geon's gaze lingered on his friends, guilt and frustration mingling, feeling helpless as the injustice of their treatment weighed heavily. Resolved to act, he rose with quiet determination, stepping forward to confront the local aggressors, a young man propelled by instinctive justice. The departing glasses friend faced resistance, a local student blocking the path with a derisive question, challenging their departure. He explained calmly, offering to yield their seats and avoid conflict, seeking to de-escalate without surrendering dignity. A malicious grin responded, rejecting their civility, insisting that privilege carried obligations that could not be ignored. Geon's face, hardened with silent anger, surveyed the scene with unwavering focus, absorbing every threat without flinching. One local placed a hand on the glasses friend's shoulder, an unspoken demand for tribute masked as charity, asserting dominance through intimidation. Fear flickered across the glasses friend's face, but Kang Geon stepped forward, poised to intervene, his presence a shield against the aggression. With swift decisiveness, he gripped the hand on his friend's shoulder, his strength asserting control in a single fluid motion. The local aggressor froze, caught off guard by the speed and audacity of the confrontation, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Kang Geon's words cut through the tension, taunting with calculated derision, framing their demand as begging rather than entitlement. The insult ignited the local group's temper, a wave of anger surging as pride and social hierarchy collided in the charged atmosphere. The first aggressor yanked back his hand, initiating a tense standoff, the silent tension thick enough to choke the space between them. A black-haired onlooker muttered in grudging admiration, recognizing courage in the unassuming new arrival, a faint acknowledgement of rebellion against expected meekness. Kang Geon ignored the faint compliment, his gaze hard and uncompromising, sending a clear message that respect would be earned, not freely given. The curly-haired instigator explained the usual tactic, how intimidation often yielded allowances, a glimpse into the transactional cruelty of their local world. Kang Geon returned the verbal strike with precision, labeling their behavior not mere begging but outright theft, challenging their morality and authority with unflinching clarity. The curly-haired boy tried to sound reasonable, insisting he wanted no chaos in the place he cherished, only the surrender of money to cover their meals. He assured them that handing over the cash was the only path to leaving safely, as though mercy were something his group could ration out. The threat hollowed out the confidence of the three ordinary kids, leaving them stunned under its weight. Yet Geon remained untouched by their intimidation, recognizing that accepting such terms meant surrendering far more than a meal, and so he pressed for a different path. He suggested stepping outside for a brief conversation, as if shifting the setting might shift the balance of power. But one friend, desperate to prevent the situation from spiraling further, pulled out a banknote. She offered to pay for everything, begging the group through her actions to spare Geon, whom she insisted was simply unfamiliar with local tensions. The local kids laughed harshly, mocking the idea that someone new had any right to carry himself with such misplaced bravery. Geon stepped forward, gently stopping her hand, assuring her through steady presence that he could take control without her sacrifice. Her fear swelled, imagining every possible ending, none of them good. Geon began speaking, revealing that he belonged to a wealthy family living on the royal floor of the Bampo Blue Tower, a truth heavy with implications. The local kids exchanged puzzled glances, unable to grasp why he would invoke status now of all times. Even his own friends felt lost, wondering why he would suddenly parade the very privilege he always avoided acknowledging. But then he displayed a stack of expensive bills, provoking offense from the curly-haired boy while igniting greed in the eyes of the others. Geon noted that the money had finally captured their complete attention, drawing them into the moment like moths to a flame. With that attention secured, he repeated his offer to step outside for a private talk, as if the bills had opened a door that words alone could not. While the curly-haired boy remained skeptical, the others eagerly imagined the profit to be made from Geon's display. Soon, both groups found themselves behind the restaurant, standing near the dumpsters where the air felt colder and consequences felt closer. Geon's friends trembled uncontrollably, but Geon shook for an entirely different reason, searching the walls for any sign of a camera. One of the local boys finally questioned his sudden certainty, unable to understand where this rising confidence came from. Another brushed aside the question, reminding him that only money mattered, and once they had it, nothing else would need explaining. But Geon stared at the ground, sinking deep into his own mind, constructing silent strategies for what might come next. He imagined striking first by seizing someone by the hair, then visualized a precise blow to the side of a neck, and even pictured shattering a shoulder blade if the situation demanded it, each scenario reflecting the grim calculations of someone preparing for the unavoidable. He even pictured the final strike, a decisive twist meant to end the last opponent before the weight of that thought settled heavily on him. Gathering himself, Geon pulled back from those violent imaginings, reminding his own mind that these were just kids, not enemies, and that his classmates stood behind him, fragile and afraid. Recklessness here could shatter far more than bodies. One boy stepped forward, demanding to know whether Geon understood the reputation of the group he had dared to confront. Then, with a raised fist, he declared himself a top fighter from the Seoul Physical Education High School boxing team, as though the title alone could crush resistance. Yet even that trained strike came nowhere close to touching Geon, who slipped aside with effortless precision, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate him. His speed rattled everyone present, especially the puncher, who suddenly saw his own confidence collapse in the shadow of Geon's reflexes. Observing the boy's form and the claim behind it, Geon calmly wondered if he truly was an athlete, noting the contradiction between reputation and reality. Behind him, his classmates remained frozen in fear, helpless witnesses to a conflict they were never equipped to survive. Enraged by the mockery implied in Geon's composure, the boy struck again, aiming for a vulnerable angle at the temple. But Geon evaded once more and responded with a swift uppercut that folded the boy's features inward, a single motion ending the clash. In mere seconds, two failed attacks, one decisive counter. The red-haired fighter collapsed, unconscious before he even hit the concrete. His body landed flat on the cold ground, leaving his friends staring at the suddenness of the fall, as though reality itself had betrayed their expectations. The curly-haired boy stood stunned, unable to comprehend how a single blow had toppled someone celebrated within a university boxing circle. Shock pushed the remaining local boys into defensive stances, though this time with a new caution born from witnessing Geon's quiet efficiency. Yet their leader halted them, his tone shifting sharply as he ordered them to hold position. Geon sensed something in the boy's voice that carried more calculation than bravado. The curly-haired boy suddenly asked if Geon was, by any chance, Asinu 30, a title that carried echoes of underground reputation. Recognizing the name Huang Wuyang, the opponent from days earlier, Geon questioned why he mattered now. The leader explained that he and Huang Wuyang had once shared the same boxing circles, and if Geon studied at the same school, then Wuyang must have trained him by now. Emboldened by his assumption, the curly-haired boy laid out his ultimatum, a monthly tribute of $500,000 in exchange for leaving the group untouched. He promised safety in return for the money, the offer framed as mercy but soaked in greed. Geon could hardly believe it, each moment revealing new depths of pettiness and desperation from someone who professed strength. Preparing himself, the curly-haired boy declared that Geon would have time to consider the proposal. But until then, he intended to beat Geon down, punctuating the threat by lunging forward. He charged not in a straight, reckless line, but in a zigzag pattern, the practiced movement of a boxer trained to evade retaliation. The erratic, unpredictable pattern of the curly-haired boy's attack caught Geon entirely off guard, a jolt that tested the limits of his instincts. Even so, years of harsh North Korean training had forged reflexes sharp enough to narrowly evade every punch aimed at his face. The strikes grew faster, closing in dangerously, each one a brush with pain, a test of precision and composure. The curly-haired boy showed no signs of exhaustion, his rhythm almost playful, as though the chaos itself exhilarated him. Suddenly shifting his approach, he dropped low and attempted an uppercut aimed for Geon's chin, mirroring the exact strike Geon had once executed. The movement came so quickly that Geon barely registered it, followed by a loud thump that echoed in the tense alley. His classmates instinctively closed their eyes, huddling together, bracing for a disaster they feared was inevitable. Summoning courage, the first girl dared a glance, her heart thudding as her gaze met the scene. The sight froze her blood, a cold clarity settled over her, sweat trickling down her face in disbelief. Geon had blocked the uppercut effortlessly, using his leg against the boy's bicep to halt the attack mid-air, a subtle but decisive move that stunned all witnesses. Even the curly-haired boy had to look down, dumbfounded at why his strike had failed, comprehension lagging behind action. Geon stood silent, unmoving, his gaze fixed steadily on the bewildered opponent. Realizing his attack had been thwarted, the curly-haired boy gritted his teeth, frustration and anger flaring visibly. He shifted stance, determined to punish the audacity, as if discipline alone could restore his lost pride. But Geon remained resolute, unyielding, the same calm and measured presence that had guided him throughout the fight. Just as tension reached its apex, police officers appeared, their voices cutting through the alley, demanding the reason for the confrontation. At the sight of law enforcement, the remaining local boys froze, immobilized by a fear they had never felt before. The curly-haired leader, however, barely flinched, a click of the tongue marking his displeasure at the interruption rather than fear. Ordering his gang to retreat, he watched them scatter, leaving behind their incapacitated friend, a casualty of their own recklessness. One desperate youth shoved an officer aside in his flight, while the curly-haired boy glanced back, a silent promise that the confrontation was unfinished. Geon remained still, absorbing the moment, refusing to react to taunts or threats, his patience a weapon in itself. In a final, decisive gesture, Geon drew his phone from his pocket, measuring the distance with cold precision. He hurled it directly at the retreating leader. The motion fluid, controlled, calculated. The device struck the boy squarely in the neck, the impact immediate and merciless. He collapsed to the asphalt, knocked unconscious, the alley falling silent. Geon's quiet dominance the only echo remaining. As the curly-haired boy struggled to rise, he realized the law enforcement officers had already surrounded him, a silent authority pressing down from every angle. Orders barked, some officers pursued the fleeing youths while others secured Geon and the fallen boy, asserting control over the chaotic scene. Geon complied quietly, his body tense but his mind steady, offering no resistance as he was guided by the officers. Slowly, the entire group, Geon's classmates and the local gang, were escorted to the police station, their movements constrained yet strangely orderly. After minimal questioning, most of the other students were released, while Geon and the curly-haired boy remained detained for further scrutiny. In the corridor outside the interrogation room, Geon's classmates provided statements, clarifying that they had not initiated any conflict. They recounted how the incident had started, provoked entirely by the local boys intruding into the snack bar and demanding money. The officer, noting the consistency in the statements, turned to the curly-haired boy, questioning whether the account of events was truthful. A stern warning followed, emphasizing that extorting money constituted a serious crime under South Korean law, the gravity of the situation palpable. The boy neither denied nor admitted wrongdoing, claiming that, as fellow students, they had only requested money for food, framing his actions as minor and justified. He further questioned why the matter had escalated when, in reality, no funds had actually been exchanged. His raised voice sent tremors of fear through the other students waiting in the corridor, their unease reflecting the tension of the moment. The police turned back to Geon's classmates, demanding clarity on why the altercation had occurred, warning of further detention if statements were inconsistent. The curly-haired boy interrupted, mocking the claim of victimhood, pointing out that several of their peers had been beaten while the others remained unscathed. Geon's classmates defended themselves, explaining that they had only reacted when their friend had been ganged upon, framing him as the one who had resisted. Frustration mounting, the officer struck his clipboard, restoring order with a warning that continued arguments would require rewriting all statements. The curly-haired boy remained silent, clicking his tongue in exasperation, a subtle challenge in the face of authority. Geon's classmates fell quiet, the momentary lull heavy with tension and uncertainty. Throughout the commotion, Geon sat in contemplation, weighing the complex layers of conflict and consequence surrounding him. Anxiety crept in, each passing minute amplifying the complications beyond what he had anticipated. A few minutes later, a new presence arrived, greeting the officers politely and announcing the arrival of the students under his supervision. The sight of this figure drained the color from the curly-haired boy's face, sweat beading as recognition and dread collided. This visitor was the boxing teacher of the four boys, a figure whose authority and experience outweighed the chaos of the street fight. Bowing respectfully, he accepted responsibility for the actions of his students, offering reassurance to the officers and diffusing some of the tension. Yet before addressing responsibility, he sought clarity on the circumstances that had led to the students being brought to the station in the first place. The officers' frantic gestures barely concealed the tension, insisting that it was a minor incident, a response to a civilian report with no victims and no lasting danger. Bowing repeatedly in apology, the teacher approached the curly-haired boy, whose body immediately trembled at the imposing presence. With a firm grasp on the boy's ear, the teacher forced him to his feet, a silent warning embedded in the gesture. The teacher's voice, sharp and uncompromising, challenged the boy on his recklessness, questioning why he risked his debut match by clashing with civilians. While correcting the curly-haired boy, his gaze swept across the room, briefly landing on Geon, measuring the quiet strength he sensed there. Geon met his eyes without reaction, a calm presence amidst the storm, giving nothing away. Without further words, the teacher led the trembling boy out of the police station, leaving a tense quiet in his wake. Geon's mind lingered on the scene, trying to grasp the full significance of what had just unfolded. The officer turned to Geon's classmates, enforcing the rule that they could only leave once their guardians arrived, the formality underscoring their vulnerability. Moments later, Ji-yeon's father arrived, the roar of his blazing car cutting through the heat and tension of the day. Shame washed over Ji-yeon, knowing his injured father had been compelled to leave home to fetch him, yet he said nothing. His father smiled warmly, welcoming him into the car, the bandages on his face a quiet testament to his own recent trials. Back at home, Father Comrade probed gently but firmly, asking what had transpired this time. Ji-yeon sought forgiveness, acknowledging his mistake, but Mother Comrade's gaze conveyed the weight of his actions, emphasizing that bullying his friends was no trivial matter. Father Comrade dismissed the idea of external recourse, insisting that conflicts should be resolved on the spot without involving institutions like the police. He reminded Ji-yeon that South Korea's society was intensely information-driven, where every action left a trace in the unyielding records of life. Words failed Ji-yeon. He remained silent, humbled, offering only a quiet plea for forgiveness. Mother Comrade's hand found his, a gentle gesture anchoring him in the midst of regret. She reassured both Father Comrade and Ji-yeon, emphasizing that despite the trials, everything had ultimately aligned perfectly in the end. Ji-yeon could only murmur his astonishment, realizing that South Korea's complexity exceeded the simplicity of his own understanding. Mother Comrade's concern deepened, her eyes reflecting the weight of his struggle to comprehend. Father Comrade's disciplined tone cut through, questioning whether Ji-yeon would continue to repeat such reckless behavior. Anger flared within him, his fingers clenching at the thought that he might endanger the mission that defined his purpose. He vowed, voice fierce and resolute, that he would never again jeopardize the mission, the essence of his life's work. Determined to prove his worth, he returned to his laptop, diving immediately into the task of gathering every piece of information relevant to the mission. He pored over every detail he could find: police records, local precinct reports, accounts of violent incidents, school disputes, even methods to deal with threats without resorting to violence. Determined not to repeat past mistakes, Ji-yeon dedicated himself completely to this research, immersing in every scrap of knowledge he could gather. The next morning arrived, and this time it was Kang Geon who boarded the bus, stepping into the routine of the students around him. Like the others, he disembarked at the station directly in front of the school, blending into the familiar rhythm of arrival. He reflected on last night, recalling how he told his parents he would take the bus from now on, believing this small autonomy might diffuse some lingering problems. Approaching the school gate, his eyes caught two figures conversing, one from his own school, the other from a nearby institution. The local student, a boxing club member, was the same one Ji-yeon had dealt with violently the day before, while his classmate Hwang Woo-young stood speaking with him. A familiar unease settled over him. Ji-yeon sensed another plot unfolding against him. Moving quietly closer, he attempted to eavesdrop, hoping to grasp their intentions before being noticed. His patience ran thin, and the local boxer spotted him, freezing in immediate recognition. Fear overtook him, and the boy fled, tail tucked between his legs, leaving Ji-yeon to confront Hwang Woo-young directly. He demanded answers, but Hwang Woo-young claimed ignorance, genuinely unaware of the previous conflicts. Turning away with an air of detachment, Hwang Woo-young insisted this was a personal matter and he had no obligation to interfere. Without another word, he walked back toward class, leaving Ji-yeon momentarily alone, though voices soon called out from behind. He turned to see who sought his attention, curiosity mingled with caution. It was the friends from that earlier restaurant outing, the bespectacled boy and the freckled girl who had faced those local bullies with him. They conversed briefly, recounting events, until the roar of a powerful engine announced the arrival of a bright yellow G-Wagon at the school gate. Recognition struck him immediately. The vehicle belonged to Gojin Seok, the same boy with whom he had clashed the day before. Clad in his signature red sneakers, Gojin Seok stepped out, presence rigid, commanding, but betraying no emotion. His bodyguard followed closely, performing the silent, precise motions of service. opening and closing the car door without a sound. Gojin Seok's face remained an unreadable mask, betraying nothing of his thoughts. Students filtered into the building, exchanging waves and casual goodbyes, while Gojin Seok had already taken his seat, silently observing. Without raising his voice, he fixed a cold glare on Geon, who lingered with his friends, still unaware of the scrutiny. Just as Geon began to move toward his seat, Gojin Seok questioned why someone of his status would choose to associate with classmates he deemed inferior. Slightly puzzled, Geon simply responded that there was no reason not to. All of them were his peers, and to him, they were friends. Gojin Seok's gaze carried a sharp disappointment as he reminded Geon that this was not some egalitarian space. Friendships, he insisted, were reserved for equals, warning that lingering with others would only drag him down. Geon's eyes drifted to his friends across the room, their laughter and easy camaraderie, a stark contrast to the rigid hierarchy Gojin Seok imposed. Confusion swirled in Geon's mind. Why inject societal hierarchy into a classroom? The logic felt arbitrary, almost absurd. Gojin Seok pressed on, insisting he cease associating with them, his irritation sharp and personal, as though Geon's choices were a reflection on him. Geon ignored the admonition, quietly settling at his desk, the tension between conformity and autonomy pressing silently against him. As they waited for the teacher, both phones buzzed simultaneously, a small interruption in the wait of expectation. Glancing at their screens, they saw a message from Ara about her birthday party, the mundane notice carrying an undercurrent of invitation and anticipation. The message included the location: Hilton Hotel at Crystal Row, a detail that anchored the coming social encounter. Ara caught Geon's eye from across the classroom, waving her phone with a subtle smirk, the unspoken acknowledgement threading a connection. Her friends teased lightly, yet Ara remained unfazed, a quiet defiance in the face of pure scrutiny. Geon returned a smile, lifting his phone in acknowledgement, the gesture bridging the distance between them. Gojin Seok's eyes darkened with displeasure at the display of warmth between Geon and Ara, a surge of envy tightening his jaw. Anger coursed through him, veins straining, teeth gritted, as he watched their lighthearted exchange with mounting frustration. The rhythm of class passed, and soon the lunch bell summoned the students, with Geon occupying a central spot in the cafeteria. He devoured his meal with a fervor that left those around him momentarily stunned, an almost primal assertion of presence. His three friends approached with their trays, intent on joining him, the movements a quiet assertion of camaraderie. But Gojin Seok interposed, carrying his own meal, a silent command pushing them aside. His authority was unspoken but unmistakable, and they yielded immediately, stepping away with a mix of respect and caution. The first girl bowed instinctively, the gesture both apology and acknowledgement of unspoken hierarchy. Observing Gojin Seok take a seat beside Geon, the trio retreated to find their own space, the cafeteria now segmented by invisible lines of dominance. Mid-bite, Geon received Gojin Seok's pointed admonition, no openings for others to exploit, a constant lesson in vigilance and social navigation. The lecture continued, emphasizing that his softness invited dependency, that others would cling and latch onto him if given a chance. Disgust tinged Gojin Seok's words as he likened the less fortunate to scavenging hyenas, a metaphor heavy with contempt for opportunism. Geon's thoughts sharpened, the admonishment casting a shadow over his affection for his friends, yet he remained silent, internalizing the tension. Into this uneasy stillness, Ara interjected, drawing attention back to the lighter moment, confirming he had received her birthday invitation, a fleeting reprieve from the hierarchy-driven lecture. Ara's message was precise, extending a personal invitation to her birthday party that weekend, a small beacon of connection amid the social tensions. Geon's face lit with a genuine smile, silently accepting the invitation, the simple gesture carrying a quiet affirmation of choice and presence. They exchanged a brief mutual wave before parting ways, Ara flanked by her followers, Geon stepping into the currents of his own solitude. Some of Ara's entourage whispered to Geon about his unusual fortune, remarking that her attention rarely lingered on anyone, amplifying his fleeting sense of exclusivity. Across the room, Gojin Seok exhaled a deep, audible sigh, the weight of disappointment etching itself onto his expression, a silent storm of dissatisfaction. In response, Geon slammed his spoon onto the table, the noise echoing his mounting frustration, a physical punctuation to internal discontent. He rose abruptly, leaving his untouched meal behind, a deliberate act of withdrawal and silent protest. Gojin Seok, asserting his authority, demanded that Geon clean his table, the unspoken hierarchy reinforcing control even in small acts. The untouched plate stood as a testament to Geon's resistance, a small yet potent symbol of defiance. Geon's friends exchanged puzzled glances, unable to grasp the full scope of his sudden fury. Seeing the food discarded before him, Geon's anger swelled, a visceral reaction to what he perceived as waste and disregard. Internally, he condemned Gojin Seok, attributing the cavalier treatment of the meal to the corrosive effects of unchecked wealth and privilege. In quiet rebellion, Geon gathered Gojin Seok's food onto his own plate, honoring each morsel with deliberate care, a small act of ethical defiance. As the day drew to a close, luxury vehicles lined the school gate, each a symbol of status awaiting its occupant. Geon, however, had chosen simplicity, summoning a friend to accompany him on the bus, rejecting the spectacle of privilege. From behind, Gojin Seok collided with him, a forceful assertion of presence and expectation. Standing firm, Gojin Seok pressed Geon to abandon the bus plan and enter his car, framing it as an opportunity and a command simultaneously. Geon hesitated, weighed by promises to both family and friends, politely declining and reaffirming his chosen path. Gojin Seok exhaled, signaling to his bodyguard, the silent threat hanging in the air like a storm cloud. With quiet menace, the bodyguard was tasked to ensure compliance, heightening the tension surrounding Geon's choice. His classmates trembled, frozen by the looming presence and the implied consequences of resistance. Geon, sensing the strain his presence caused his friends, felt reluctant, torn between autonomy and the safety of others. With a resigned sigh, he acquiesced, stepping into the car, a compromise between self-will and social pressure. The bodyguard bowed in acknowledgement to Gojin Seok, while Geon's friends lingered, silent witnesses to the unfolding hierarchy as the car drove away. En route, Gojin Seok once more demanded to know why Geon persisted in defying his social directive, the tension between choice and control persisting. Geon struggled to understand why Gojin Seok reacted so sharply toward his three friends, unable to trace the root of such hostility. The tension deepened when Gojin Seok added another command, forbidding him from attending Ara's birthday party that weekend. When Geon quietly questioned the reason, Gojin Seok dismissed it, claiming Geon's presence annoyed everyone and should therefore be avoided. Irritation flared in Geon, who demanded a clearer explanation for such vague demands. Pressured, Gojin Seok revealed the truth: his anger was born of jealousy, provoked by Ara's growing closeness with Geon. The admission stunned Geon, who realized all the conflict stemmed from the fragile emotions Gojin Seok tried to veil. Gojin Seok attempted to justify himself, insisting that his family and Ara's shared deep ties. Still confused, Geon wondered if these A-Tech connections hinted at a hidden structure only the upper class understood. Yet Gojin Seok clarified it was nothing complex, just resentment that the girl he expected to stand beside him someday seemed drawn to someone else. It all traced back to wounded pride, bruised ego, and simmering envy, emotions he could no longer hide. Geon, taken aback by the honesty, fell silent, searching for the right way to respond amid the tangle of emotions. He mentally sifted through countless approaches, imagining ways to confront the truth with clarity. Eventually, he chose directness, asking plainly whether jealousy had driven all of this turmoil. The question enraged Gojin Seok, who recoiled at the feeling of being so easily seen through. Understanding the conversation had reached its limit, Geon asked the driver to pull over, creating an abrupt shift in the atmosphere. Gojin Seok turned on him in frustration, questioning whether Geon thought he now had the authority to command his bodyguard. But Geon's expression hardened, his eyes carried a weight that allowed no argument as he repeated the order to stop. The sudden intensity in Geon's gaze froze Gojin Seok, stripping away his bravado. Reluctantly, the car eased to a halt, the bodyguard complying in uneasy silence as Geon prepared to step out. Before leaving, Geon offered one final truth: real friends are untouched by jealousy, a message that landed like a quiet blow. Gojin Seok sat stunned, the words echoing in the enclosed space, unraveling his confidence. Geon, unaffected by the lingering tension, shut the door behind him and walked home with calm finality. As his humiliation twisted into anger, Gojin Seok ordered his bodyguard to punish Geon, fueled by a need to reclaim his wounded pride. Shocked, the bodyguard turned to confirm what he'd heard, unsure if such a command was truly meant. But seeing Gojin Seok's flushed, furious expression, the bodyguard realized the order was sincere rage had overtaken reason. The bodyguard held his ground, sensing the absurdity of the demand and refusing to turn violence into a duty that had never been his to claim. The refusal only deepened the young master's frustration, as if the world itself had begun ignoring the authority he believed he carried. The bodyguard calmly reminded him that true power did not belong to the one shouting orders, but to the man who had hired him, his father. The truth unsettled him, and in a desperate grasp for control, he reached for his phone, determined to pull his father's influence into the conflict. The moment the call connected, he spilled complaints with the frantic urgency of someone watching their authority unravel. He thrust the phone at the bodyguard, claiming his father wanted to hear the truth from the man who had defied him. The bodyguard explained everything with steady patience, his voice holding a calm weight that contrasted sharply with the chaos brewing behind him. Meanwhile, the young master sat in the back, silent and shrinking into the stillness of his own indignation. By then, Geon had already reached the intersection when he heard hurried footsteps behind him as the bodyguard called out. He turned slowly, wondering what new demand the moment was about to place upon him. The bodyguard approached with conflicted resolve, urging him to apologize, insisting that even he had no desire to strike a child. Geon watched him for a quiet moment, observing the strain in the man's expression. Lowering his gaze, he exhaled deeply and admitted his sympathy for the man dragged unwillingly into another person's chaos, questioning what sin of his required an apology. The bodyguard insisted that justice meant little when power weighed heavier than truth. Geon challenged the logic, arguing that if power alone mattered, then he had even less reason to bow to it. The tension only pushed the bodyguard closer to the edge, as he realized he might be forced into a fight he wanted no part of. Yet the street around them felt hostile, not from violence, but from the silent gaze of a world watching. Cameras blinked from every corner, recording each gesture, turning the moment into something heavier than a simple dispute. Even the cars around them carried silent witnesses, dashcams capturing every breath. Geon pointed out the obvious danger, reminding him that their anger had chosen a stage far too exposed. The bodyguard's face twisted with conflicting emotions, astonishment at Geon's fearlessness, and irritation at being cornered by a child who refused to bend. With a strained voice, he ordered Geon to follow him. He gestured toward a secluded spot he often noticed in passing, a place untouched by the gaze of any camera. That hidden corner, he insisted, was where their unfinished confrontation could continue unrecorded. Hearing this, Geon began walking toward the place without hesitation, while the bodyguard remained still, unwilling or unable to take the first step. Instead, the bodyguard turned silently and began the walk back to his car, carrying the weight of restraint with him. Without a word or commotion, he slid into the seat, leaving the street and its dangers behind. Gojin Seok stared in disbelief, unable to fathom why his strongest protector had returned empty-handed, defying his orders. He demanded an explanation, his voice trembling between fury and confusion, only to be met with the calm logic of too many eyes watching from above. Veins bulging, he seized the bodyguard's shoulder, shouting at what he deemed a pitiful excuse, insisting that punishment was owed. The bodyguard remained resolute, arguing that safety came first and the young master could not be abandoned, no matter the provocation. Fury erupted again, a storm of ego and impatience demanding immediate action, defying reason. Calmly, the bodyguard reminded him that the election loomed nearby, and any reckless confrontation could invite disaster. He suggested scheduling the lesson for another day, when tempers could be expressed without endangering anyone. Realizing his desires clashed with prudence and authority, Go-jin Soyok finally relented, swallowing his outrage. Geon cast one final glance toward the car, feeling the tension of shattered pride simmering inside. Inside, Go-jin Seok's ego fractured. A tempest of anger erupted, hitting objects and walls as if the world itself were to blame. Shouting, throwing, striking, he unleashed all the fury of a bruised self-image, consuming the space around him. At the threshold of his apartment, Geon froze there. Waiting was the curly-haired guy, a shadow of malice in the night. Scoffing, he taunted Geon, pointing out the stark honesty of his residence, hinting at an exposed vulnerability. Turning to reveal a photograph, he reminded Geon that unfinished business from the police incident was still awaiting resolution. The photo showed their glasses-wearing friend, held hostage by the boxing club, a stark warning of stakes now personal and immediate. Rage and fear collided within him as he realized his friends were now endangered because of his presence. Silently, he motioned for them to follow, each step heavy with resolve. Night had fallen by the time they reached the granary mill, shadows swallowing the old factory as he approached. Inside, the three boxing club members sat near crates, their captive kneeling silently, tension pressing like darkness around them. The first to notice their arrival was the man whose chin had been shattered by Geon's uppercut, his eyes narrowing. Tossing his cigarette aside, he rose with the sharp certainty of confrontation, announcing that the moment had come. The glasses-wearing friend trembled, tears welling, begging for forgiveness for the endless trouble his presence caused. Seeing this, Geon felt the heat of fury ignite, protective instinct merging with righteous anger. The curly-haired guy spoke with detached pragmatism, explaining that no personal grudge was held. They had only brought the glasses-wearing friend as a precaution, in case Geon did not show. In truth, he was irrelevant to them, merely a pawn in a game that had nothing to do with him, a living insurance policy. Motioning to his companions, the curly hair instructed them to release the glasses guy, letting him flee with trembling steps. Yet even as he ran, the threat lingered, a warning that going to the police would only endanger the girls connected to him, making every escape precarious. The boxing club erupted in cruel laughter, their amusement sharp and hollow as they watched his fear. Kneeling nearly to the ground, the glasses-wearing friend sobbed, unable to protect or act, his apologies choking in the darkness. But Geon's response was calm, a steadying hand on the trembling shoulders, grounding his fear without a word of anger. Reassurance whispered through his touch, a promise that danger would be faced and survived, while urging him to stay back, out of harm's way. Using the small support of the glasses guy's shoulder, Geon drew back, preparing, his body coiled like a spring ready to release. In an instant, he vanished from sight, a blur of motion like wind tearing through the mill. His speed was surreal. The others couldn't even register his approach. Only the curly hair guy saw the faint outline of his presence. By the time he arrived, his fist was already set, a precise strike aimed with unerring focus at the head of the first opponent. Instinct flared as the curly hair raised both hands defensively, attempting to shield himself from what was coming. But Geon's movements were seamless, instinct-driven. He shifted his strike mid-attack, redirecting from top to bottom in a fluid arc. The punch landed squarely in the stomach, leaving no room for defense, no time to breathe. The force expelled every ounce of air from the curly hair's lungs, leaving only a hollow, painful gasp as he crumpled. Momentum carried him backward, colliding violently with the wooden crates behind him. The impact splintered the beams beneath him, and he collapsed unconscious, the fight over before he could comprehend it. The remaining members of the club stared, frozen, unable to process the sudden, devastating display. Geon moved without pause, a second roundhouse strike landing squarely on another opponent's stomach, precise and merciless. A powerful elbow followed, striking another, each movement fluid, precise, leaving no chance for recovery. The last of them trembled uncontrollably, the gravity of choosing the wrong adversary now clear in every trembling limb. By this point, Geon's actions had transcended thought. Pure instinct guided him, every motion a continuation of the previous strike. The final opponent, desperate to regain control, lunged for a headshot, but even in motion, Geon's awareness was complete, his response instantaneous. A sharp knuckle slice to the cheek intercepted the attack effortlessly, a precise cold reminder that resistance was futile. In barely 10 seconds, the entire boxing group was rendered unconscious, each one collapsing as if the world itself had betrayed them. The glasses-wearing friend watched in stunned disbelief, witnessing the raw, terrifying ferocity of his companion. He saw, unflinchingly, what a force of nature Geon truly was, a predator honed by instinct and precision. Slowly, the curly hair began to regain fragments of consciousness, though his mind was drowning in shock. Horror gripped him as the scene unfolded. His peers, the supposed top fighters of the school, lay inert while one man stood unbroken and unyielding. Not a single bead of sweat betrayed Geon's calm control. The devastation he wrought was complete, total, undeniable. His gaze, sharp and unrelenting, carried a silent warning. Any further mischief would meet consequences far beyond their understanding. The curly hair had no spark of resistance left, no ember of courage, only a trembling, hollow fear consuming him from within. Geon's eyes scanned the space, calculating, seeking a tool to impose consequence and lesson simultaneously. Nearby, discarded rods from construction lay idly, waiting for the one who understood their purpose. He retrieved a rod, unbending and raw, his strength bending it to a manageable form, the audible snap reverberating through the curly hair's nerves. The breaking of the rod alone sent a shiver of dread through the curly hair, a visceral prelude to what was to come. Pulling out splinters from the broken rod, Geon readied his tools with meticulous calm, each movement deliberate and exact. Fear gripped the curly hair fully now, amplified by the sight of tiny, precise implements in Geon's hands. The remainder of the rod was cast aside, the snapping sound echoing, shaking even those sprawled unconscious on the ground. Leaning against wooden crates for support, the curly hair barely rose to his feet, quaking, while Geon advanced steadily, a predator closing the distance. Words, measured and deliberate, accompanied his advance, a promise that any misstep would carry consequences far beyond the moment. Then, with calculated force, Geon seized the curly hair by his jacket, yanking him to the ground without hesitation. Pinning him, Geon mounted, asserting absolute control over both body and space, a silent declaration of dominance. Every word he spoke was weighty, a harbinger of punishment that would forever shadow the curly hair's cherished pastime, boxing itself. Geon's grip intensified on the trembling hand, the raw pressure forcing surrender, the inevitability of consequence unavoidable. The curly hair's fingers spread under relentless force, each movement a reminder of the futility of resistance. He lifted one of the needles near a nail, a poised and precise threat, the anticipation heavy in the air. But before action could cross a line, Geon turned to the glasses-wearing friend, instructing him to step aside for his own safety. Overcome with fear, the friend obeyed immediately, fleeing the scene, realizing that Geon's wrath was both necessary and absolute. He began the lesson in unflinching silence, demonstrating the consequences of daring to threaten those he cared for. The details remained hidden from view, but the air carried the agonized screams, each strike precise and deliberate, a warning carved into flesh. Trembling violently, the curly hair could do nothing but weep as the pain surged through him, the needle's sting a cruel testament. Geon measured the punishment, knowing this intensity was sufficient to impress a lesson without total destruction. Yet he warned that even this measured pain was a mercy. Further interference would bring consequences far more unforgiving. He displayed a silent array of needles, letting the threat speak louder than any words, the unspoken message clear and final. Even the smallest appendages would not be spared should boundaries be crossed again, a chilling extension of his warning. Leaning close, Geon ensured the lesson was understood, declaring this confrontation their last, leaving no room for misunderstanding. He released his weight onto the ground, the thump reverberating through the warehouse, signaling completion. Observers held their breath until the space was cleared and relief washed over them. For a moment, he questioned if his actions had been too severe for someone so young, doubt flickering in his mind. Memories of the North Korean intelligence agency resurfaced, reminding him that resilience was forged through extreme trials. Children had been tied to trees, left like suspended objects, enduring hunger and dehydration as preparation for a harsh reality. The brutal regimen sought to ensure they would not break under pressure, a relentless shaping of mind and body. Many others had suffered similarly, enduring torture in the name of strength and discipline. Among them, a young girl had burned with the same indomitable fire that now fueled him. Her resolve mirrored his own, a silent testament to survival amidst cruelty. Returning to the present, Geon shook his head, forcing the past to recede, compartmentalizing trauma into a manageable space. Turning to the glasses-wearing friend, he assured him that the threat had been neutralized and he need no longer fear. The friend remained frozen, rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a mix of awe and terror. Geon misread the hesitation, assuming the trauma of prior encounters had left him shell-shocked, not realizing the magnitude of his own actions. Attempting reassurance, he embraced the friend, urging secrecy, but the gesture was met with tremors of fear misinterpreted as a new threat. Trapped by circumstance, the friend reluctantly agreed to the unspoken terms, silence bridging their uneasy understanding. Shifting the focus, Geon inquired about sustenance, seeking a return to normalcy. The friend admitted hunger, prompting Geon to propose a return to the place where their ordeal had begun, a symbolic reset. The next day, the school resumed, and Geon found his corner seat, his friend slowly entering the classroom, the weight of the previous day lingering in his mind. His gaze met the two girls, offering a warm, reassuring smile and a gentle wave, while the glasses-wearing friend remained silent, weighed down by lingering fear. Returning the gesture with a genuine grin, he radiated calm, trying to convey that all was safe. The glasses friend trembled subtly, memories of the previous day clawing at him, yet he masked it with a tentative smile and a faint wave. Relief settled in Geon as he saw no signs of injury or lingering danger around them. His eyes drifted to the far corner, where Hwang Woo-young sat quietly, a figure detached from the turmoil around him. A flashback struck him, recalling the aftermath at the restaurant with the glasses friend, the memory still sharp and unyielding. At the restaurant, his friend had wept uncontrollably, reliving the terror of being ambushed, the fear raw and vivid. Even after yesterday's confrontation, Geon realized the web of connections was far from resolved, threads still tangled. Questions lingered, like how Hwang Woo-young might be linked to the boxing group, leaving uncertainties gnawing at him. He wrestled with himself, torn between ending the problem entirely and avoiding another fight, when Gojin Seok entered the classroom. Seok approached 30, requesting the gym to be reserved for an upcoming fight, signaling intentions clearly. His gesture toward Geon confirmed that permission had been granted for a controlled confrontation, an opportunity framed as legitimate. Understanding dawned quickly, the implications clear and the path forward visible. A small smile crept across his face at the prospect of a sanctioned fight, a controlled environment offering leverage. Anticipation fueled him further, recognizing how this progression could simplify the challenges ahead. Yet Hwang Woo-young's refusal cast a shadow over the moment, a barrier he could not yet overcome. Seok's confusion reflected the sudden unpredictability, unable to comprehend Woo-young's hesitation. Woo-young explained the weight of his father's hospitalization, unwilling to shoulder additional burdens for the time being. With that avenue closed, Geon merely clicked his tongue, accepting the limitation without further challenge. A smirk tugged at his lips as he taunted Seok, recognizing the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. The provocation pierced Seok's composure, veins throbbing with fury as he vowed retaliation in a safe moment. Geon met the threat casually, unshaken, ready to face him whenever necessary, his confidence unwavering. Seok seethed, humiliated and inflamed by Geon's unshakable demeanor, the contrast stinging his ego. Yet Geon's mind was elsewhere, occupied with another matter that demanded focus, a separate task awaiting attention. Approaching 30, he sought answers about the involvement of the glasses friend, questioning the need to draw an innocent bystander into the chaos. Hwang Woo-young attempted to feign ignorance, pretending not to grasp the weight behind Geon's stare, a futile act against the quiet storm before him. Geon seized his shoulder with unyielding force, a silent declaration of dominance, leaning close so that the gravity of his presence was unmistakable. In a low, controlled tone, he conveyed the unspoken law: any threat to his friends would not go unanswered. Before the sentence even fully formed, Woo-young yielded, the implicit understanding of consequence settling over him like a heavy shadow. He also granted access to the gym, recognizing the necessity of clearing the chaos that had unfolded, the practicalities of control intertwining with authority. Hwang Woo-young offered no resistance, swallowed by the weight of Geon's unwavering determination. Observing this quiet confidence, Gojin Seok's anger boiled inwardly, stung by the stark disrespect and power displayed so effortlessly. When school ended, the trio made their way to TJ Sports Company, a familiar ground where skills would be tested and intentions revealed. The bodyguard exhaled heavily, musing over the strange days that now demanded he supervise confrontations involving youths. Yet, calling Geon a child felt increasingly hollow, memories of past fights flashing through his mind, a reminder of the boy's extraordinary prowess. He recalled the one-sided knockout against Hwang Woo-young, each movement precise, merciless, and unnervingly calm. Despite labeling him a kid, the bodyguard recognized the gap between Geon's skill and ordinary adolescence, a truth impossible to ignore. The memory of Geon's intense, almost predatory focus haunted him, eyes burning with a ferocity that belied his age. Even so, the bodyguard's confidence held firm, knowing no high schooler could match the disciplined edge he had witnessed. As he prepared to step into the gym, movement caught his attention, someone approaching, commanding respect without a word. The mere presence of this figure froze him, a silent acknowledgement of authority and shared history. A fit man in his 50s, draped in a long leather coat, radiated a quiet power that required no introduction. With measured courtesy, the man acknowledged their long separation, the subtle weight of past collaborations lingering in the air. The bodyguard bowed, apologizing for his abrupt departure, yet the elder dismissed it, the understanding between them unspoken but clear. He spoke of the futility of the rewards versus the burden of their roles, a truth familiar to those who had served in demanding, underfunded positions. A casual inquiry about the bodyguard's mother sparked surprise, an unexpected depth of knowledge and care that unsettled him. The elder explained that he retained records of every operative, observing their paths silently, honoring the exceptional among them. Once more, the bodyguard apologized for not being able to communicate sooner, acknowledging the gulf imposed by overseas assignments. The elder waved the apology away, reminding him that uncertainty was universal among those in their line, their positions ever shifting. When pressed on his return to South Korea, he offered little, merely citing a national duty, leaving the specifics shrouded in quiet mystery. He began piecing together the layers of mystery, inquiring about the situation surrounding 30's father, sensing that the truth was far from what met the eye. The bodyguard mentioned reading a news report claiming that 30's father had slipped into a coma from a brain hemorrhage, the public narrative seemingly complete. The officer corrected the surface story, hinting that reality was far murkier, which had necessitated his presence and investigation. The revelation hit the bodyguard like a jolt, leaving him momentarily frozen at the divergence between appearance and truth. The officer hinted that the damage bore the signature of the elusive Shadow, a figure whose name alone carried weight. The bodyguard's eyes widened, the mere mention of Shadow conjuring the weight of legends long whispered in covert circles. He connected this revelation to the prior DDoS attack on 30's father's company, suspecting it too was orchestrated by North Korean hands. The officer dropped another name, Zero, a North Korean operative of unmatched infamy, causing the bodyguard's nerves to fray further at the echo of history. The officer unfolded the investigation's true focus, Shadow and Zero, two figures of unparalleled skill who had vanished 10 years prior, inexplicably targeting a seemingly trivial company. The question lingered, heavy in the air. Why would globally hunted masterminds fixate on such an unremarkable target? Each revelation compounded the bodyguard's astonishment, layers of intrigue pressing down with relentless weight. After laying bare the secrets he could, the officer departed, promising to document the findings and return them to the proper channels. Alone, the bodyguard silently wished the officer a safe retirement, aware of the perilous path such work demanded. Yet the legends themselves were nearer than he could have imagined, present in the room without fanfare. The figure known in whispers and legends as Hacker Zero revealed a personal connection. He was none other than Gyan's father, a ghost from the shadows whose skills were unmatched. Alongside him, the deadliest and most feared assassin moved with a silence that spoke volumes, her reputation sending shivers through those who dared whisper her name. That formidable presence, both feared and respected in the underworld, was Gyan's mother, the embodiment of lethal precision and untouchable mastery. Back in the gym, the ring lay empty, a stage ready for the inevitable, each figure settling into position with quiet tension. Gloves fastened, Gyan readied himself, every muscle bracing for the clash to come, a silent meditation on focus and intent. Gojin Seok's grin cut through the air, eager anticipation painting his face, hungering for the outcome. Meanwhile, the bodyguard stood in contemplation, bitter at the absurdity of supervising youths in battle, even wealth powerless against his mounting disillusionment. He reflected on the farce unfolding before him. The spectacle had grown too great, and the thought of departure weighed heavy on his mind. With preparations complete, Hwang Woo-yang quietly announced his intent to leave, a shadow of disinterest masking a deeper fatigue. Gojin Seok laughed, taunting the abruptness of the exit, urging him to remain and witness the spectacle. Yet Woo-yang's expression remained sour. He reminded them that he had lent the gym and even facilitated transport, his generosity already spent. Gojin Seok asserted his dominance, claiming that hierarchy still mattered and that after defeating Geon, he would reinstate him as his right-hand man, a bizarre power exchange that left the air heavy with tension. Geon could only watch, puzzled, as these convoluted hierarchies and posturing played out before him, each claim feeling more surreal than the last. With his father absent, Hwang Woo-yang found no reason to stay entangled in Gojin Seok's schemes, stepping away with quiet refusal, severing himself from the imposed hierarchy. Gojin Seok spat on the ground, vowing retribution once his status was reclaimed, a simmering promise of control over those who defied him. Geon interjected with measured calm, declaring that victory in the upcoming spar with the bodyguard would determine allegiance, staking personal terms against imposed authority. Veins bulged on Gojin Seok's forehead, fury and disbelief coiling within him at the audacity of being challenged by those he deemed beneath him. Striding closer, Gojin Seok insisted boundaries were necessary, framing the upcoming duel as a test of respect and a check against relentless escalation. He reasoned that without limits, Geon might continue amassing challengers until defeat was inevitable, a caution rooted in obsession with dominance. Standing face to face with his spar partner, Geon clarified the stakes this fight would be the last, a deliberate attempt to break the cycle before it consumed them both. Gojin Seok mocked the resolve, dismissing any hope of victory and emphasizing the bodyguard's legendary NIS training, a taunt heavy with arrogance and condescension. The mention of NIS expertise piqued Gyeon's curiosity, igniting a sudden awareness of the broader power and precision of South Korean military training. The bodyguard issued a final warning, offering Geon a chance to de-escalate by apologizing, a lifeline extended not from weakness but from a desire to avoid unnecessary conflict. Geon bristled at the offer, sensing the sting to his pride, yet weighed the absurdity of being asked to bow in a situation he had no intention of surrendering. Gojin Seok continued his verbal provocation, undermining pride and professionalism alike, framing the bodyguard's role as mere mercenary service against children. The bodyguard remained unmoved, clarifying that his offer was born of restraint rather than fear, a conscious choice to minimize harm. Geon, unwilling to yield, scoffed at compromise, solidifying his resolve to stand firm without apology. Recognizing the impasse, the bodyguard exhaled, a measured acknowledgement of the inevitability of confrontation. He issued a cautious apology for the impending conflict, preparing himself to control the force he would unleash when Geon's kick erupted toward his face. Reflexes honed by experience allowed him to tilt his head just enough, evading the strike by a hair, a narrow escape that sharpened the tension. Shock coursed through him. Geon's speed defied prior expectations, a vivid reminder that skill was more than strength alone. Harnessing the kick's momentum, Geon regained his footing with fluid precision, each movement purposeful, a dance of calculated aggression. Momentum carried him into a full spin, an elegant yet deadly motion that amplified the force behind his next strike. The roundhouse followed, aimed squarely at the bodyguard's torso, a blend of power and speed that demanded immediate response. Instinctively, the bodyguard raised his arm, forming a shield, barely absorbing the impact yet maintaining his balance against the relentless assault. Surprise flickered across Gojin Seok's expression as he witnessed the rare feat of Geon's kicks being successfully blocked, his disbelief mirrored in the charged air. Every movement demanded everything from the bodyguard. Geon's strength surpassed expectation, each strike a reminder that this was no ordinary confrontation. Even Gojin Seok felt a flicker of unease, watching his seasoned bodyguard falter against a seemingly relentless opponent, the progression of the match now unpredictable. Despite the chaos, Gojin Seok acknowledged Geon's technique, admiration mingling with frustration at the young fighter's prowess. He mused that half-learned attacks were a danger to the unprepared. Inexperience here would only rebound harmfully on the attacker. Geon paused briefly, recalibrating strategy, recognizing that this opponent was leagues beyond the punks he had faced before, demanding both respect and precision. He even considered the optics of victory. Winning too easily might attract suspicion, a reminder that every action carried consequences beyond the immediate fight. From the sidelines, Gojin Seok's impatience rang out, urging his bodyguard to strike decisively, unaware of the deeper calculation unfolding in the young fighter's mind. Realizing the danger of intentional restraint, Geon understood that feigning weakness would only grant the enemy an upper hand. Compromise was a trap he could not afford. Minor strikes would no longer suffice. He needed to adapt, to recalibrate his assault with precision and purpose, testing the limits of his opponent's skill. Shifting stance, he drew his right leg back, angling his foot diagonally, a posture signaling intent, signaling that this was no longer a game. This was a stance reserved for serious confrontation, directed at an opponent whose skill demanded full engagement and vigilance. Every motion carried a dual purpose: to test, to measure, to probe the capabilities of the South Korean military-trained bodyguard. The bodyguard, still viewing Geon as a child, maintained a conventional stance, underestimating the ferocity behind the young fighter's eyes. A direct jab cut toward his face, narrowly avoided, the bodyguard realizing that Geon's intentions were shifting beyond mere sparring. A fleeting glance revealed the change in purpose, no longer random strikes, but calculated attacks, precise and lethal in focus. Geon's fingers aimed with surgical intent, targeting the eyes, each movement a silent testament to his lethal understanding of combat. The bodyguard attempted to process the sudden shift in style, but Geon allowed no hesitation, driving forward relentlessly with every strike. Another punch arced toward his head, narrowly swayed aside, the rhythm of attack unbroken, the young fighter dictating tempo with unnerving precision. After evading 3 successive attacks, the bodyguard seized initiative, countering with calculated grip and aggression. Collars and arms locked in tension, both fighters immobilized briefly in a delicate stalemate of force and leverage. Neither could gain ground, suspended in a moment of strategic equilibrium, each aware of the other's strength and intent. Using the pause, the bodyguard attempted a roundabout throw, seeking to unbalance the young fighter and regain control. Geon anchored himself, legs entwined with his opponent's, refusing to be toppled, bending physics with precision and reflexive strength. With his opponent's elbow in grip, he leveraged the locked position, turning defense into opportunity with fluid, instinctive motion. The bodyguard's hold was undone. Geon ripped free, tearing his collar in the process. A calculated escape that left both fighters reeling yet fully aware of the battle's stakes. The bodyguard found himself stunned, repeatedly shaken by the relentless tenacity of this seemingly small, unassuming opponent. Even more unnerving was Geon's effortless composure. Not a bead of sweat betrayed the exertion, as though he were merely jogging for leisure. Poised for his next move, Geon seized the bodyguard's leg with precision, ready to redirect the battle entirely. Using the grip as leverage, he propelled himself toward the bodyguard with unyielding speed, a controlled force aimed at disruption. But the strike diverged from expectation, landing under the arm rather than on the head, a calculated redirection of power. The impact drove an impression into the bodyguard's torso and ripped his fingers from the shoulder grip, demonstrating sheer inhuman force. The collision sent the bodyguard hurtling backward, skidding nearly a meter away, pain radiating with every movement. Clutching his side, the bodyguard seethed internally, questioning what martial art or force he was facing, utterly unrecognizable and uncontainable. Observing the endurance of his opponent, Geon realized partial effort would no longer suffice. This fight demanded his full, unreserved strength. Both paused briefly to recover, but Gojin Seok's impatience surged, his shouts pressing the bodyguard toward reckless aggression. Conflicted by competing commands, the bodyguard felt the friction of duty and instinct, agitation mounting. Geon responded with a silent glare, sharp enough to cut through the tension without a single word. That gaze, drenched in silent bloodlust, froze Gojin Seok mid-shout, silencing him as effectively as any command. The fight resumed, now with the bodyguard pressing forward, charging directly at Geon with controlled aggression. Geon countered by placing his palms on the bodyguard's shoulders, attempting to redirect momentum with precise leverage. Though unable to halt the charge entirely, he used the push to retreat strategically, stepping beyond the bodyguard's reach while maintaining balance. Temporarily locked in tension, Geon readied his next strike, a powerful leg-driven attack aimed squarely at his opponent's face. Anticipating the strike, the bodyguard dropped low, narrowly evading the knee punch with careful precision. Using the opportunity, the bodyguard secured Geon's shoulder as a foothold, anchoring the young fighter in place. Grasping the second arm under his leg, he immobilized Geon, locking both fighters in a tense stalemate of limbs and leverage. With his opponent contained, the bodyguard attempted to slam Geon to the ground, using pure force to regain dominance. Yet Geon countered effortlessly, intertwining his legs around the bodyguard's neck to cancel the throw mid-air. Momentum became his ally. Twisting fluidly, he unbalanced his attacker, reversing the throw with uncanny precision. The reversal left the bodyguard crashing to the mat while Geon remained poised, a study in controlled chaos. Still, despite the constriction around his neck, the bodyguard endured, refusing to yield, his resilience a testament to both training and will. He felt a jolt of disbelief realizing the bodyguard could endure a chokehold that should have ended the struggle. Accepting there was no breaking through that resistance, he released his grip and retreated several steps, searching for clarity. The bodyguard steadied himself, forcing breath back into his lungs as he rose, refusing to stay down. A quiet question lingered between them, why the young fighter held back when this battle demanded nothing less than total commitment. The bodyguard couldn't ignore the sharp insight in the boy's gaze, impressed by how quickly he understood the weight of the moment. He rose fully, offering an apology for his earlier arrogance, and the acknowledgement stirred a spark of excitement in the young fighter, who sensed the real challenge awakening before him. Yet instead of unleashing his true strength, the bodyguard simply conceded, declaring the match already lost. The decision left the young fighter suspended in shock, unsure how to process a victory he had not sought in this form. From the corner, Gojin Seok unraveled, unable to accept the abrupt surrender unfolding before him. The bodyguard added that losing meant he owed no allegiance to the young master's pride, further deepening the tension. The young master erupted, demanding a fight to exhaustion, unable to comprehend how anyone could walk away from the chaos he loved to watch. His rage spiraled as he threatened the bodyguard's livelihood, swinging insults like weapons. The bodyguard finally rejected the barrage, silencing the young master with a single firm command that halted him mid-breath. He then stated, with calm finality, that he would resign on his own terms, freeing himself from that toxic leash. The young master stood stunned, watching the fragile power he clung to crumble in real time. With a hint of regret, the bodyguard turned to leave, wishing their fight had taken place under better circumstances and hoping for a true rematch someday. A faint smile tugged at the young fighter's lips, recognizing the mutual respect born through blows rather than words. Then his gaze shifted toward the trembling figure nearby, sensing the fear radiating off the young master. Wearing a smile that felt too calm for the moment, he invited them both into a darker conversation waiting beneath the surface. The young master only shook harder, bracing for whatever reckoning was about to approach him. Dropping his gloves, the fighter began to walk forward, prompting the terrified young master to shriek threats about his powerful father's wrath. The fighter acknowledged the father's influence, an ambitious presidential candidate with the power to reshape the nation in half a year. Misreading the calm, the young master laughed, thinking fear had finally taken root just before a blur of hands cut through the air toward his face. The strike halted a breath away, a silent reminder of how easily the situation could shift into violence. He lingered in an internal stalemate, torn between ending the torment in front of him or avoiding the storm that such an act would unleash. Choosing to preserve the fragile peace of the moment, he lowered his hand and stepped back, avoiding unnecessary escalation. Sweat pouring, Go-Jin Seok laughed, convinced he had made the right call in not provoking his powerful father. That laugh, however, ignited a spark in Geon. He recognized that inaction would allow this arrogance to persist. In a swift motion, he slammed his hand onto Go-Jin Seok's face, driving him back against the cage beam with controlled force. Fear consumed Go-Jin Seok, audible in the grunts and tremors that betrayed his usual bravado. Geon's laughter filled the space, a reflection on the absurdity of someone so proud crumbling under a single precise strike. Struggling to appear unbroken, Go-Jin Seok insisted his threats could not truly harm, though every motion betrayed panic. A momentary confusion passed across Geon's face, pondering whether this was challenge or provocation. Silently, he moved his hand to seal the other's airways, asserting control in the quietest yet most absolute way. Within seconds, Go-Jin Seok gasped, the inability to breathe forcing terror into every fiber of his body. Desperation drove him to claw at Geon's arm, begging for release as the panic of suffocation overtook him. Frantically patting and struggling, his motions grew more erratic as oxygen dwindled. The panic escalated, muffled screams pressed behind clenched jaws, yet Geon remained unwavering, his expression stoic. Stoicism defined Geon, holding the restraint without a flicker of emotion, a mirror to the relentless inevitability of consequence. Tears and helplessness overtook Go-Jin Seok. His spirit teetered on the edge as consciousness began slipping away. Sensing the threshold, Geon released, and Go-Jin Seok drew in a violent, rasping breath, lungs finally reclaiming air. Declaring that the lesson was sufficient for now, Geon allowed the other to recover, the echo of fear still lingering. Yet as his voice returned, Go-Jin Seok vowed retaliation through his father, sparking the realization that fear alone was incomplete. Geon responded without hesitation, silencing him once more by reclaiming control of his airways. Observing the desperate struggle, Geon measured patience against stubbornness, calculating how many repetitions it would take to truly break him. After a second release, Go-Jin Seok's defiance lingered, still clinging to the notion of appeal to authority. Geon exhaled, acknowledging that even 2 lessons were insufficient for a spirit so obstinate. On the third attempt, the resistance finally crumbled. Go-Jin Seok's pleas were absolute, surrendering entirely to survival. Yet even in defeat, Geon observed the lingering glint in his eyes, predicting further trouble should leniency be granted. Powerless to resist, Go-Jin Seok repeated his apologies endlessly, a quiet testament to the lesson fully absorbed. At last, recognizing that his spirit had been utterly broken, Geon released him, the tension finally dissipating. Before stepping back, he issued a final warning, a silent promise of suffering that left no trace but weighed heavily on the mind. Any future interference with him or his friends would make each day an inferno, a relentless reminder of consequences. Go Jin-seok remained mute, defeated in the present yet silently brooding over his loss. Geon sensed the undercurrent of scheming still alive in him. Silence now was merely the mask of calculated patience. His gaze hardened into something chilling, a silent assertion that fear would never dictate his actions. For Geon, life in this country carried purpose, friendships, study, the pursuit of knowledge, and the hope of building a meaningful future. Dreams of a steady career, family, and eventual success in high positions shaped his contemplations. Meanwhile, Go Jin-seok's mind churned with mischief, plotting how to disrupt what Geon had painstakingly built. Yet Geon saw it all clearly, recognizing the silent malice and resolving that any future interference would meet immediate reprisal. Without further words, he pressed his hand onto Go Jin-seok's face, the weight of authority immovable and absolute. To Go Jin-seok, the touch was monumental, a force against which all resistance was futile. Overwhelmed, he covered his face and pleaded silently, a fragile surrender to the inevitable. In that moment, Kwang Woo-young burst into the gym, calling out for Geon to halt, intervening before the lesson went too far. Urging restraint, Kwang Woo-young insisted the point had been made. Enough punishment had been delivered. Helping Go Jin-seok to his feet, Kwang Woo-young offered a steady hand, grounding the shaken youth. Geon chuckled softly, a wry reflection on the reversal of roles, the familiar dance of power now mirrored in new faces. Kwang Woo-young quietly accepted his own errors, a promise forming within him never to harass or harm another again. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button until explosion. See you on the next video.